Hello everyone, welcome back to Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. My name is Candace Marie. Happy Friday guys, I hope you're well. We are live on Friday, July 26th, doing live readings. You guys can see this, give me a thumbs up and say hello in the chat. Consider sharing the live stream with somebody else who might want a reading. And I'm excited to get into it with you guys. I missed you last week. How was that intense blue moon in Capricorn, that very Pluto moon, huh? So just a little bit about what we're going to be doing here today. If this is your first time, first of all, make sure you hit the bell button below, subscribe to the channel so you get my other videos. I practice tarot as well as Western astrology. We use the Sabian symbols to make sense of what's going on in the cosmos. So we're here every Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Sunday. And we alternate every other Friday and we do readings. So some weeks we do tarot, some weeks we do astrology. We're doing astrology this week, we're doing astrology next week. Everybody gets astrology readings because we got to get back on schedule, and next week is going to be yet another new moon. So I just want to tell you guys, if you are seeing this on Saturday, we are no longer live. Please don't send any money, don't send any donations because we are no longer live, and I'll catch you here next week for the new moon in Leo readings. We got a ton of people in the chat, so I just want to say hello to everybody. I see CZ, Christine, Emma, Jessica's here, Dorothy's here, Victoria made it, Enchanted's here, Queen of Light Bulbs, what's going on? I hope you guys are doing well and your Friday is off to a great start. What's up, Maker? Okay, so a couple things. First of all, before we even get into it, there's already a ton of communication issues with this live stream. There's a bunch of people that are sending questions, they don't have info. There's a bunch of people who don't know whether or not they got a reading. So bear with me because sometimes the astrology readings can get really busy. And Mercury is going into shadow. So I'm already kind of noticing there's some communication stuff that's going on. If this is your first time getting a reading, there is a QR code right here. You can scan that. It'll take you directly to my PayPal where you can make a donation for a reading. You can ask any one question that you want in regards to transits or natal aspect for $55 US. We are also doing Sinistry for $70, and I need information from you. Please put this in the memo box. It makes it so much easier. We can get through the reading so much more quickly and efficiently. To cast your chart on the screen here in front of everybody, and for me to be able to assess your chart, I need to know where you were born. That means the city, state, and country, the time you were born, including the AM or the PM, and I also need to know the date. Please spell out the month because I know some of you guys are international and, that kind of varies country to country. All right, so the way that this works is we're going to do the readings in the order that they were received. If you are a level 3 member, you guys are going to get your readings first. That's one of the perks of being a member on my channel. If you guys don't know, I'm a full-time content creator. I do long-form content for you guys. I talk about everything from the retrogrades to the eclipses, the moons, and we do weekly astro weather and some pretty lengthy horoscopes. So those of you guys who join my memberships, you guys are awesome. There's several different levels. But level 3 is going to get a reading once a month, and it's a pretty sweet deal. So consider joining my memberships if you want to support me as a content creator. Number 2, I will call out the readings in the order that they are received. So you'll hear me call out a couple names. That's me letting you know, hey, you're on deck, your reading is coming up. And I will make sure that we get your reading. We will only leave the QR code up for so long, probably about 15-20 minutes. That's it, because we got a bunch of people who want readings. So if you know that you want to get one, get in there. And also make sure you follow me on X at BTB Astro. I'm on there. That's the primary kind of social media that I use. That, or if you guys want some really, really good memes, you can follow me on Instagram at Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astro. Okay, so here's who I have, and before I even get into this, I just want to let you guys know, I was just going through the list, and for Christine, I know that we went back and forth about one of your questions. I was just looking over the, basically my list, and I had a reading that we did for you the very first week of July. So you have already cashed in on your monthly reading. If you want to get a reading, I'm happy to read for you. You just have to make a donation, or you can come back next week when we come into a new month. I think it's going to be next week, right? Let me see. Let me double check this. Hold up. What is that? Yeah, the 2nd. So if you want to come back on the 2nd, you can cash in on that for your monthly reading if you want. I would read for you, but we're just doing one a month for the membership, so just let me know. And who else? Okay, so here's who I have for the level 3 members. Looks like Lisa just got in there. Thanks, Lisa. Have I read for you before? I just want to make sure that I have your chart. I'll double check. All right, so I have Dorothy, Emma, Jessica, Queen of Light Bulbs, Victoria, Enchanted Crossroads, and Lisa. So those are the ones that I have for you guys for my level 3. And then other people who are in the queue, I have CZ, Danielle, Camille, Marissa, Amber, and Kiki. So you guys are the names that I have for the readings. We will let you guys know if we're gonna close the queue. Okay, no worries, Christine. No, I can get you next month or next week. Well, technically next month. So come back next Friday and I'll read for you. All right. Let your light shine says I'm level 3, but I paid on PayPal. Okay, so I'll call out your name. You'll hear that. So if you have not heard your name, let me just double check this. Then that means I haven't gotten a donation, but it looks like Corey and Yulia got in there too. So I'm adding you guys to my list, okay? So if you heard your name, I've got you. Corey and Yulia, all right? And we'll be back next week with, we're going to be doing more astrology. Let's see. What's up, Echo? It's nice to see you. Okay, cool. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to start with Dorothy. So Dorothy, Emma, and Jessica, you guys are all on deck, okay? So you guys are going to be the first 3 that I'm going to be doing. Looks like Dorothy's got questions about a Tesla. Thank you for sending that again. I don't know what happened. Sometimes when you send it in early, it goes like MIA in the comment section. I don't know what that's about, but... So let me go back to your question here. She says, I'm looking at Teslas. I'm not sure with Mercury retrograde if I should wait. We discussed Leo season. I'm willing to wait. Thoughts on Q4 of 2024. Okay, so it's good that you're aware that the retrograde is coming, especially considering this Mercury retrograde it's going to start in Virgo, but it's going to retrograde back to Leo. So that can be sometimes about kind of like extravagant purchases or investments. And it will be coming into several squares with Uranus. So Uranus can be like what's electric. And Venus is actually currently in your 3rd house, which is why I think you're looking for a vehicle. But I definitely feel like it's a good idea to wait. Because if we think about it, right? So you're Gemini rising, so you're ruled by Mercury. So if Mercury is going to be retrograde, it's going to be in your 4th house, which some schools of astrology also consider to be vehicles. Or if we look at it whole sign, the retrograde is going to be in your 3rd house, and it will square Uranus several times. So my advice is we wait until we have a better transit that's going to be involving both Mercury as well as the Sun. So there is decent timing that's coming. I would say something like... Well, first of all, a Mercury retrograde is a great time to go and like look for deals, to start looking at, potential places that you would buy for, be trying to kind of strike a deal, or maybe you would rethink the strategy of like how you would buy a car or where you would get one. So I don't know if you're thinking about buying one and ordering one, or if you're thinking about buying one that's already on a lot. That's going to play into this as well. But Mercury is going to retrograde. It's going to come into conjunction with the Sun, which is your whole sign 3rd. And something interesting is going to happen here. So when you have the Cazimi, this might be about like when you finally figure out like what kind of Tesla you want, what color you want, what model you want, right around the time of the full moon. So this is going to be August 18th. That is going to create a full moon, okay? And it's going to square Uranus. So this means that there's going to be some unexpected, lesson revolving around vehicles, travel. I think that maybe you're going to go and educate yourself even more on Teslas, especially because the 3rd house is like short distance travel and the 9th house is long distance travel. You might go and do some research on, well, do I need a Tesla that's going to, you know, have a battery that's going to get me further? And do I have all the parts and the pieces to charge it? Where is the closest charging station? Is it cheaper for me to buy one that's going to be in another city? Do I have to wait for it to be made and kind of get shipped here? So there's going to be something that's going to get worked out with the Cazimi. And then we can see like the sun go into Virgo. And the challenge is that the sun will come into an opposition with Saturn. So that tells me also that still not a good time to maybe purchase something. So let's do something like you said Q4. So 3 or 4. But I would say another thing that gets me thinking about this is that you are also going to see that Mars will move into your whole sign 3rd house and it will oppose Pluto. Like, I feel like there could be some issues revolving around if you're ordering a new car, how long it takes to arrive, where it's coming from, like that kind of stuff. So once again, it's going to depend on how you're going about like actually buying a car. Are you looking to like order one, or are you willing to buy one that's already on a lot? Have you looked at some in other areas? That's some questions that I would have. I would say maybe when we get the sun into a trine with Saturn, that might be a better option. And that's when Mars is opposing Pluto. So that could already bring up some issues or delays revolving around getting a car. But the sun will trine Saturn, and that's going to happen right around November 3rd. But the Mars-Pluto aspect is also triggering issues revolving around like purchases. Like this will be in a Gemini whole sign 2nd house. So it means you want to spend something, but there could be some challenges that may come up revolving around shipping something in, funding something, paying for the loan, there being unexpected costs and other things that are kind of coming up for you. She says, I'm open, such a Gemini answer. Okay. So the other option is then you wait until maybe the sun starts coming into a trine with Mars. And that looks like right at the end of November. Okay. So the sun is the whole sign 3rd house ruler. Obviously, Mars is going to be about taking some kind of action, getting something. The challenge at this time is that Mercury is retrograde. So that means that there can be a little bit of a challenge haggling with another person in regards to like a sale, because the 7th house represents a marketplace. So that is not my favorite aspect, especially because that Mercury is going to be in a square to Neptune and it's in opposition to your Jupiter. So this is gonna take a little bit longer, basically. We could look at Mars going retrograde in your 3rd house, where you're still reevaluating or deciding whether or not you want to get something. Just some food for thought, like you don't want to be making a purchase when Mars is in opposition to Pluto, right? Because that's happening in your 3rd house, so that's going to be in early January. To be honest with you, I think that this is a situation that you would be much better off maybe waiting until you're getting closer to the full moon. That's going to be in Leo. And that is going to be a full moon in your whole sign 3rd house, ruled by the sun, and the sun does square Uranus. So even that seems to talk about challenges revolving around like shipping and receiving. Like anything between this summer and like next, like, you know, the new year going into the spring, it does look like what you want can be delayed. So you need to really decide whether or not you're going to be able to get what you want, number one. And number two, I get a little iffy with Mars going retrograde in your whole sign 3rd house, because that means that you're changing your mind in terms of your goals when it comes to vehicles. And Mars also rules your 6th house, which is maintenance. So you really want to go and fully educate yourself on what's it going to cost to have it maintained. How often do you have to have it maintained? Is it going to be more expensive? Do you need to go to special places to have it serviced? Obviously, being a Tesla, you know, all that stuff is kind of bang on. She says, I'll be watching that full moon. It's also right next to my progressed moon. Cool. Just so you guys know, last call. So we're going to call last call right now. So if you want to get a reading, get in now before we close it, and we'll let you know when we close it. If this were me, okay, if this were me, I would personally wait until after the Mars retrograde. I would wait until Mars comes out of the opposition with Pluto, and when Mars is starting to come into a trine with either your Venus or your Sun. So that's going to be closer to spring of 2025. Technically, Mars will be in a trine with your Venus from here. So May 3rd, that would be a day that I think would probably be a decent day to get a vehicle. You've got the moon and Mars saying, yes, it's time to do it, coming into a trine with your Venus, which is about luxury. Mercury is coming in conjunction with your sun. So it looks like maybe you found the right place, to pick something up. This is all sextiling Jupiter on your ascendant. So you're like, I got wheels, I'm going somewhere. And you've also got the post retrograde well, the Venus and the Mercury retrograde has completed around the sign of your sun. See, that's the other thing, is that not only do you have a Mars retrograde in your vehicle house, but Mercury, your chart ruler, and Venus is going to go retrograde over your sun. I feel like talk to other Tesla owners, really do your research on it. Make sure that's what you want. Make sure that you feel confident with that purchase, because I could see if you buy something and then you realize you don't like it, or you're not crazy about the maintenance, that the spring of 2025 could be like being like, do I really want to keep this car? Another option is, you lease something, and if you want to do a lease during like a retrograde or something, obviously read the fine print, but that can be a decent thing that you can do as well if you're not totally committed to owning something and you want some flexibility. But if this were me, I would wait until spring of 2025, and I would do it sometime around the beginning of May, because I think you have better aspects then. Obviously, that's a ways away. And if you do decide that you maybe want to go and test drive one, or maybe you want to rent one for a couple days to make sure you like it, that may be a better option. And if you're feeling extra impulsive and you're like, I'm looking at them, I know I want to buy one, then you at least need to wait until after the Mercury retrograde. When Mercury goes direct, which is going to be closer to the end of August, you're looking at Mercury going direct around 21 degrees. And it will start coming into a trine with your sun. So you're going to have a conjunction of Mercury and the moon happening around August 31st and September 1st, which will trine your sun. That's the earliest that I can give you the green light. Hope that's helpful. What kind of Tesla are you looking at? What color are you looking at? I've seen so many Cybertrucks where I live now. It's weird. There's been a handful of them I've seen over the last 2 weeks. They're just kind of popping up everywhere. Those things are huge. It's crazy. All right. So we've got Emma, Jessica, and then Queen of Light Bulbs. Oh, nice. Red. All right. So let's go to Emma. What's up, Emma? I hope you're doing well. Let's see what she asked here. Hey Candace, I like to collect my monthly reading. I like to get info on the new moon in Leo and what's coming up with the cosmic energies for me. You got it. You got it. All right, so let's look at this new moon in Leo. If you guys haven't already seen the video for that, check it out. It is a very nice new moon. I'm very excited to see this new moon. I feel like we all could use some good vibes. All right, so first things first, it's going to be taking place in your 8th house, okay? So, we're going to see a Mercury retrograde that's going to be there. We are also going to see the new moon there. Down the road later this year, we'll see a Mars retrograde there. So it's really important for us to get familiar with the Leo area of our chart, because there's a lot that's going to be reworked and under construction there. When we think about Leo, it's about creativity, romance, self-expression, playtime, taking chances, and we're putting that into the 8th house, okay? So for me, this is about how can I change and transform my relationship to creativity? How can I set new intentions revolving around receiving more assistance or assets from other people? How can I focus on my savings? How can I tackle debt? What's my love life like? What's going on in the intimacy department? All of these things seem to be really important. Equally, as a Pisces, this is going to be 6 signs away from your sun. So you're going to hear for your Pisces horoscope, making changes to your health, making changes to your habits, maybe reorganizing your office. So when I kind of merge those two together, for me, it's about your psychological health. It's about reworking something about your diet and detoxing something. And this particular new moon actually features, a Venus quincunx Neptune. And Neptune's right on your sun. So you're kind of probably feeling like you're in a fishbowl right now as you go through the Neptune transit. You can be very sensitive. There can be like moments where you're having like almost like really sensitive like psychic abilities, or you can feel like a little bit more empathic than usual. Anyway, that Venus quincunx your sun and Neptune is trying to get you to communicate, trying to get you to share something that you're vulnerable about. It's trying to kind of clear up any misunderstandings in communication. It's trying to make you feel more inspired. It may be a time where writing or journaling can be really significant for you because it is highlighting your third house. And the Mercury retrograde will go through here and make the same aspect. So the more that I look at like the new moon and then I look at like the Mercury retrograde, I'm like, wow, this is so important because it doesn't just quincunx, which is trying to kind of make you aware of what you're missing. But simultaneously, this is also going to quincunx Pluto. So guys, if you haven't already seen this, Venus and Mercury are going to form a yod basically with these particular aspects. It's a finger of fate. So it's like, you know, the universe pointing to that particular part in your chart going, something needs to be reworked here. And then Mercury will come back and rework it. I see this as an opportunity also because it is a new moon that squares your north and your south node, that it's helping you get out of past patterns and habits, right? South node in Taurus, where you maybe are too physically focused or too relationship focused, or maybe there can be stuff that's coming up that's revolving around untapped creative potential. And it's also squaring your north node, which is in the 11th house of other people. I feel like this is about like coming out of your shell and feeling more confident when it comes to like your sexuality, your expressive, tendencies, your creative abilities. And it's pushing you to change. Basically, that's what's happening. It's pushing you to change. So 6 months from now, this will become a full moon. And when it becomes a full moon, it's going to be a full moon that's going to square Uranus. And so honestly, Uranus in the 5th house, a full moon that will happen in the 8th house, it could represent a windfall. It could represent, the fruits of your labor when it comes to really working on, managing joint expenses or really managing psychological stuff, really tapping into, creative potential. It could pay off in a very big way. I think that that's most likely what is going to happen. Also, the new moon has Venus trine your Jupiter, girl. So this is big for creative projects, for romance, for dating, for self-expression. And also I think for, possibly having some financial luck. That's kind of the feeling that I'm getting. Part of this could also be that you're getting ready to see Pluto go back into Capricorn. So it's asking you to totally change and transform something about yourself to then start receiving some of these like financial rewards with Pluto coming back into your 2nd house. So the name of the game with this new moon, I think, is vulnerability because of the 8th house and the trine to your Neptune, getting out of your comfort zone because of the squares to the north and south node, and sitting down and maybe making some notes, channeling some stuff, reading some tarot. 3rd house can be very metaphysical when you have Neptune kind of going through there. And it can help you kind of tap more so into your intuition as well, learning how to kind of trust yourself a little bit better. Okay? Hopefully that's helpful for you. Just catching up. Thank you guys. I appreciate it. Give us a thumbs up if you like this stream. I appreciate it. All right, so we're going to move on to Jessica. And Jessica, I'm not going to read the email that you gave me because it's very private, but I am going to read through it just as a refresher, although I did read it, and then I'm going to answer your question. So if there's anything you don't want me to talk about, just let me know. All right, so let's pull that up here. All right. So Jessica, basically, long story short, she says, what can I expect in love coming up? Her current situation is confusing. You're welcome, Emma. Okay, so We did a synastry reading for her recently, and it kind of sounds like things didn't pan out and you broke it off. You've connected with another person from your past. You guys are kind of feeling it out, and things have gotten a bit complicated recently. And you think he has feelings for you, but you guys aren't really communicating very well. And you've noticed that he's had jealousy and comments. Okay, so let's talk about your astrology right now. First of all, you have Uranus coming into conjunction with your descendant. This brings sometimes good shocking surprises, chance encounters. Sometimes it can bring somebody exciting into your life very quickly. And I remember telling you, like last year, I was like, dude, something is going to happen with Uranus coming into this particular part of your chart because it's sitting on an angle. This is where we meet other people. It's funny because Aquarius does rule your whole sign fourth house. So dealing with someone from the past, right? The fourth can be the past. Simultaneously, you have Jupiter coming in for your moon. So that expands, because Jupiter, it creates expansion, lunar themes. Your home, your emotions, it can be about pregnancy, it could be about family, it could be about a new home, and some expansion of emotional connection, seventh house, to another person, right? So just some stuff that I'm thinking about is like Jupiter will retrograde back and forth over your moon, providing you with relationship opportunities basically all year long. That's not going to stop. The challenge, though, is that you are going to see Saturn, which is going to be going through your fourth house, coming into squares with your moon. So you're going to be like, I feel kind of emotionally blocked. I don't really know if we're on the same page with how we're communicating. I don't know if they feel the same way. And you can be feeling a little guarded and a little reserved because that's what Saturn does when it's connected to your fourth or your fifth house. The fourth house is more your emotions. The fifth house is going to be more kind of your heart when it comes to dating and relationships. Just recently, Mars has been in conjunction to Uranus, which means there's been a lot of sporadic opportunities to connect with somebody, or there's been lots of opportunities to kind of like, jump into something. It can be very passionate, it can be really sexual as well. So that's been a huge theme pretty much since mid-July, about 2 weeks ago. So now that is separating, so whatever togetherness has been kind of happening, now Mars is coming into conjunction with Jupiter. Technically, it's still in your seventh house, so that does talk about another potential partner who could show up, right? Gemini is multiples. It could be another person you meet. It could mean that, you're really optimistic about approaching relationships and expanding with another person because you're ruled by Mars. The challenge is that this is going to be coming into a square with Saturn, and you're going to see that in mid-August, and you're going to see that again at the end of December. So Saturn says we need to get grounded, we need to be cautious, we need to focus on home. I think it's safe to say for a lot of Scorpio risings, whether they're partnered or not, there is, especially late degrees. So this more resonates actually with Sag rising. But for you, Saturn in your fourth house is responsibilities, emotional heaviness, limitations, things revolving around home and family, and how that is being challenged by relationships. Girl, you're having eclipses in the fifth house, which can be about romance or babies. You've got an eclipse that's going to be coming actually in mid-September. That's going to be the very first Pisces eclipse. And that's going to be a North Node eclipse, full moon. So a lot of Scorpio or Scorpio risings are going to be like, I'm falling in love, or, I'm pregnant, or there's some exciting, creative project that's potentially starting. So expansion and contraction, right, is kind of what I see. When we see a positive transit happening with your Venus, because Venus rules your seventh house, you're going to see things evolve in a relationship. This Mars-Jupiter stuff is quincunxing your Venus. So it means that for relationships to grow, there needs to be better communication. And there needs to be communication about where relationships are going. This is your whole sign eighth house, so it is about vulnerability and talking about fears and, what you're looking for and what they're looking for, and really getting serious about whether or not you could see yourself potentially having a committed relationship with this person. And, some of the growth that comes from a relationship will come from heavy responsibilities when it comes to home, family, or your private life. I think about the Mars-Jupiter transit taking place for an Aquarius, and that's happening 5 signs from the sun. So This is supposed to be expanding relationships, bringing opportunities for bringing people together. And now you no longer have hard aspects to your Venus. You know, Saturn will sextile your Venus off and on this year. The North and South Node are no longer squaring your Venus. So your Venus doesn't seem challenged. What seems challenging is the fact that Uranus is about to hit 27, which is a Gemini degree, which means most likely another person is going to enter the mix, right? When it comes to you and another person in a relationship. So sometimes you're not sure about one person and one person walks into your life and then they kind of show you, actually, I don't want that, I want this. Sometimes Uranus hitting a 27 here means that two people end up becoming three because they have a kid. So just some food for thought. Like, there's definitely some themes here that's trying to push you in the area of being able to grow in relationships. And maybe, you know, whether it's having conversations about like leases or where you're living or how long you've been living somewhere, or if you see yourself moving, these could be like the Saturn square situations that are kind of panning out. I will tell you, I know that there's a full moon that's going to be coming on your descendant in the fall. And also, I think you're going to be feeling the effects of the Venus-Uranus square. So pretty soon here, Venus is going to hit 26 degrees, 26, 27. That looks like it's going to be around the 2nd of August. Okay, and that squares Uranus. So this is where we break free from some kind of tension, right? That can happen. So there can be a sense of being like, I really do want to be in a relationship, so I'm going to talk to this person about it. But it can also be a time where you're like, I can't deal with this person not knowing if they're in or they out or what they want, you know, so I'm moving forward. It's not unusual. In fact, it's very common. I'm not saying it's okay, but when you have your 7th house ruler, relationships, in the 2nd, there is a sense of partners sometimes being possessive in relationships because the 2nd house is what I possess. So that can be a reflection of you, where it could say, well, I like being in a relationship with somebody who claims me and says I'm with them, right? But it may also mean that that person is kind of possessive over you, which can bring up feelings of jealousy, right? So once again, not saying it's good or bad. I'm just saying that I understand why that may be happening. And I feel like because your 7th house lord is retrograde, there's something karmic about relationships and learning in relationships that love is not possession, right? And with Saturn being conjunct your Venus, it means that there is a need to communicate and have boundaries in relationships, which is, where are we going? What are we doing? And I think that with Jupiter quincunxing this all year, there is a need to be really open and honest about your values in relationships and what you're seeking in relationships, and to kind of get really cut and dry with somebody. So the universe is not putting you in a position of being like, oh, well, my lease is up and I have nowhere to go. You know, do I ask this guy if he wants to move in? Or, oh, you know, shit, I'm pregnant. Now I got to tell this guy, you know, that. Like, these things can kind of happen with some of the squares to Saturn that will push you to really become more responsible emotionally, build that foundation of that home and family, and then the relationship expands with Jupiter in your 7th, right? So this dude is literally my neighbor. So see what I'm saying? Like, something there. And once again, I'm not crazy about whole sign astrology, but, you know, there's something to be said about, if this guy is your neighbor, Capricorn is your whole sign 3rd house, which is neighbors, and Venus is in that house, right? Conjunct Mercury, which means sometimes he's not sure what he wants and he doesn't know always how to communicate. And all of that's intercepted. So Capricorn is essentially a huge blind spot for you. And it can mean that, you know, these people show up in your life and then you just don't know what to make of it, or you don't see it coming. I'll tell you that, you know, a time that I would really watch is going to be when Mercury turns retrograde. Has anybody else seen this in the Mercury retrograde? I think I talk about it in my Mercury retrograde video, but Mercury will turn retrograde in Virgo. And on the 7th of the month of August, it will conjunct Venus. Okay, so first of all, this is like head and heart stuff. These two don't mix. That's why Venus isn't totally happy in the sign of Virgo, because it's a mercurial sign. It can change its mind. So when Mercury retrogrades, it says, let's go back and have this conversation. Let's discuss all of the things that I like or I don't like, or what's working or what's not working when it comes to our relationship. So we're going to see a lot of drama in August. We're going to see some breakups. We're going to see some people who are going to be a little bit more critical of relationships and partners. And remember that Venus rules the south node, so it is going to represent some kind of clearing or considering third-party options and being like, this relationship's not making me happy anymore, I'm going for another person. So like August is going to have some really hot tea. But I think that can be a time with Mercury retrograde that you can kind of be like, dude, where are we going? Like, what's the plan here? Like, what's the path? To be able to kind of better communicate. And at least Venus will be in a trine to your Mars, so it's a really good day to kind of sit down and have some of these discussions. I would go and learn about Uranus on your descendant. I will tell you 100%, I'm very confident that it will keep bringing other people into your life. And because 27 is Gemini, so it could be siblings, it could be neighbors, it could be two people, that represents somebody who can be kind of hot and cold. But eventually, down the road, you will have a full moon in your 7th house, right on your descendant, smack dab. Okay, right here, around mid-November. And this is a full moon that I've been looking at because, well, it's going to be conjunct Uranus for one, okay? It's going to be square, hold on, what's it squaring? It's going to be conjunct Uranus. No, it's not squaring anything. So just conjunct Uranus. But for you, it is going to start squaring your north and your south node. This is the big turning point in relationships, I think, for your astrology. And actually, because this is ruled by Venus, and Venus is going to be conjunct your Mars, you may start talking about seriously committing to somebody or discussing traveling together or moving in together or something like that right around November of 2024. So, yeah, that's the long and short of it. I hope that's helpful, giving you some insight. And this full moon actually looks like it's going to be very much being in a committed relationship, in my opinion. Hope that's helpful for you, Jessica. All right, so we got Queen of Light Bulbs, Victoria, Enchanted, Crossroads, and Lisa. Yeah, a lot of Scorpio risings will tell you that their love life has probably been insane the last couple of years with the Uranus in the 7th house transits. It's a lot. All right, so we have got Queen of Light Bulbs. And we've got the other person. Okay, let me pull that up so I can read the question here. So we're going to do a synastry for Queen of Light Bulbs. Thank you. September 3rd, 82. And let me read your question. So Rebecca, Rachel, Rosalie, you guys all got in before we closed the queue, just a heads up. So we got you. All right. So she says, all right, so this is a long distance friend of 4 years. We've encountered each other once in person, which is how we unofficially met, but I've only maintained contact online, but very consistently. I've been generously exchanging ideas and comedic content on philosophical, spiritual, metaphysical, socio-political stuff almost daily for some time now, and have a strange way of almost magically discovering and uncovering profound insights relating to our perspective. Let's see if I can make this bigger. In our studies, I didn't look at his chart until about, sorry, your message cuts off. Let's see if I can, there we go. Okay. I didn't look at his chart until about 6 months ago and noticed a lot of uncanny sync-ups between the nodes in my vertex, and I'm wondering the nature of the potential of the connection. Our conjunct Venus explains a lot regarding shared values, creative styles, and aesthetic. Tell me what you see. Okay. Let me add the vertex here and a point of fortune. There we go. Okay, so we've got Queen of Light Bulbs and this other person who she's had this back and forth with at a distance. Couple things that I see right off the bat is the Venus vertex conjunct the ascendant is nice. That can be about a fated encounter. Moon in the 7th I like because that can be about emotional relating. We've got the North Node Mercury, which is also good. That's your whole sign 12. See, this is friendly, kind of social, but it also can be good for having important conversations, especially matters of emotion and self-discovery with a square to the moon. You've got Mars, Uranus relatively close. It is conjunct your IC. And you've got a Mercury, Saturn, but your Saturn's exalted. So, I kind of also see the North Node as like a Saturn energy. So the fact that you have Mercury conjunct Saturn and North Node conjunct Mercury makes me feel like you guys have conversations that are really important. If you notice, his Mercury squares your Mercury, so he definitely wants to hear what other people have to say first. And his Mercury opposes your moon, and I feel like maybe that's why there's been challenges in actually physically coming together. Venus conjunct Venus, Venus conjunct the ascendant, Sun in the first house. These are all qualities of somebody that you would want to have like around you, kind of like Velcro, You've also got a Juno Venus trine. Let me flip his chart around with yours. So he's a Cap rising. Oh, vertex south node. So you help open things up for him spiritually and metaphysically with that conjunction. And you have your North Node and your Sun in his 7th. Very interesting that you could be the person he goes back and forth with during his Mars retrograde later this year. Mars will turn retrograde over that degree specifically, and it can bring you guys back into contact, right? Mercury on the descendant, communicating, sharing. Obviously, that's connected to the moon, and he's got the moon in the 2nd house. So understanding somebody's values. If he has moon in the 2nd house, he has to feel like they share similar perspectives, right? And it can be aesthetic because it's the 2nd house. It can be about metaphysical stuff or spiritual stuff, Pisces. It could be food preferences. So you guys have that working as well. And your moon is, kind of lighting up his 3rd house, whole sign 4th. Do you guys, I know you said it's long distance, but has there been ever any talk that he's been like, oh, let me know if you're ever like around? Because usually if your moon falls in their 4th house, there is a sense of you coming and visiting or being in their home, right? Why would he go back and forth with me, like talking or trying to get together? Yeah, so there's going to be some kind of focus basically in trying to see if you may come around or be nearby. A back and forth with you is going to be because Mars will go retrograde. So Mars will go retrograde in his 7th house, and it's going to hit his vertex. The Mercury retrograde is going through his Venus and his vertex. So that's about connecting with you more. But the Mars retrograde is going to hit your North Node and your Sun in his 7th. And that may bring you guys back into contact even more, or start talking about finding ways to be able to connect. The thing that I would say that I'm not as crazy about is that he does have his Mercury in opposition to your moon. And I feel like that can be where Mercury in Libra likes communicating and having partnership, and they like chatting and going back and forth with somebody, but the opposition to the moon is like, okay, but can we get on the same page? And you guys have planets that create a grand cardinal cross. Mercury, the nodes, your moon. And so you have North Node synastry. That means that you are here to come into communication and talk about something, especially when it comes to relationships. Suggested that, but hasn't worked on, but it hasn't worked out for me going out there. No, but possibly I would say, because Mercury does rule his 5th house of romance, the Mercury retrograde over his Venus and his vertex may be about coming back to the conversation and discussing whether or not you guys can actually connect. The moon rules his 7th. And if you look at the moon, it's in opposition to his sun. So he was going to meet somebody who was going to basically be away from him because it's an opposition. It was going to be somebody also who I think was going to shine a light spiritually, psychologically, metaphysically, whatever, on his shadow, because he's got the sun in the 8th house. And for for Virgos, the North Node eclipses and the stuff that's going to be happening in regards to relationships are very significant. Like Saturn's actually been dancing on his moon. That's about having a more serious commitment. He's Saturn. Moon is somebody else. Are you sure he's not in a relationship? Just wondering. Because, he does have Uranus that's square his Venus right now in his whole sign 5th. So that can be creating some sporadic changes in his relationships, or something that's open or on and off, or not being willing to commit. And then you're also going to see that he's going to have this this Mars retrograde that's going to go right through his 7th house, which does mean that he's much more likely to reconnect with somebody from the past and it be about, you know, a back and forth and whether or not he has evolved and if he's ready to connect with this person. He's hot, but it's long distance. I don't know if he's in one, but was chatting. Yeah, I mean, the way that I kind of see his chart right now, just to be honest with you, is that the people who are kind of in his life or the people who he's dealing with this year are significant because Saturn's retrograding on his moon and his moon's in a Gemini degree. So it could be more than one person that he's dealing with. But Saturn will hit his moon again, and that's going to be like around September. So that could be a big turning point in a relationship, especially because it'll trine Mars. And then we're going to see Saturn come back into conjunction with his moon, and that's going to be December. And I feel like with the final pass of Saturn on the moon and Mars retrograde, it's supposed to be bringing somebody back into his life that's got like a really significant Leo, Cancer kind of signature, right? Which you have. I do think that I would just be mindful that, you know, the South Node is on his Mercury. That means that he's keeping an open mind. He's keeping his options open, right? And you'll have to see what happens during this retrograde, because I do feel like with Mercury retrograde over his Venus, it's about reconnecting with somebody or saying, okay, you know, how do we take it a step further? Like, what next? The synastry is decent, but I think that I have more issues with his transits and whether or not he's ready. And I also know that, you know, this big full moon is coming for you on your descendant. There's a lot of that going on for some of you guys right here. August 19th, full moon in the 7th. So it's bringing some kind of, not conclusion, but it's really shining a light on relationships. Opposition to Sun and Mercury. It means that you're going to be like, okay, so what's the deal? Are we friends? Or like, what are we doing? Could also be a chance meeting of another person. And that's going to square Uranus. And then your natal Uranus. So you'll have to tell me what happens in August, because that's going to be a really big turning point, I think, for relationships with you. And I think the Mercury retrograde in your first house is like, it's more about what I want, not whether or not people are making the decision. I'm not waiting for other people. I don't want to, what did you say? I don't want to much be around in the playground. I don't think it's so much an age thing. I think it's that he's got Uranus squares Venus thing. And those people, when they go through that transit, especially when it's 5th to the 7th, they are going to be a little bit more selfish in relationships, and they're not going to be as fair and balanced, right? Venus in the 7th house. But hey, I think that there's more to it during the Mars retrograde, to be honest with you, that's going to go literally over your placements in his 7th house. And that could be a time where maybe you take a step back and you're like, I'm going to see what else is out there and talk to other people and not put so much emphasis on him. And then he may notice that and kind of come back around. Right? No worries. Hopefully that's helpful in giving you some insight. All right, so we've got Victoria, Enchanted, Crossroads, and Lisa. How is everybody doing? You guys doing good? All right, let's take a look at what Victoria has to say. What's going on, girl? Slage says, I'm stuck in a fat portal. Yeah, aren't we all? All right, so let's see what Victoria's question is. She made it. How did your date go? I feel like the last time you popped in, you were on a date. What happened? She says, Jupiter, Saturn square coming. Wah. Saturn in the 7th square Jupiter in the 10th house. Predict my Saturn reward if you can. Any advice, any tips? That conjunction 2020 started my 20-year cycle. It was Jupiter conjunct Saturn in Aqua. Yes, that's been highlighted quite a bit. All right, so here's the thing, right? So, and I feel like I'm gonna just say this for the next month straight, so you guys might get tired of hearing this, but Saturn wants restriction, limitation, responsibility. He wants you to be more conservative, and he wants you to really be focused on dissolving things or releasing things in Pisces that are not solid or stable. Jupiter, on the other hand, wants to drink, party, travel, wants to have a good time, wants to gamble, wants to indulge, wants to go big. So these two could not be any different, right? What's interesting is that Jupiter traditionally rules Pisces. So it means that you can't really have the growth unless you can really focus on making your dreams a reality. So it's about being stable and consistent and committed to the idea, 7th house, of true love, because Saturn rules your 5th, commitments in relationships, people who are going to be, I think, willing to commit, or people who are going to be a little bit more emotionally sensitive or responsible. So all you have to do is just show up and go like, yes, I am willing to do these things for the right person. And the square to Jupiter is about the change in your status. It's not just about career growth. You may feel like work is just super banging. There's a lot of stuff going on this month because you're going to have Mars and Jupiter come together. So there's going to be a really powerful period for you to really ramp up on your career stuff. Having meetings with people, talking to people, expanding, publishing, writing, teaching, traveling, all of these like Jupiter, Mars things. But it's going to come into a snag with Saturn. Now, if it's not about relationships, it could be about clients. So maybe with Saturn in the 7th house, you've also really focused a part of your business potentially on having clients and working with people and being able to offer services and working with them one-on-one and giving them some sort of assistance. But there is part of your business that wants to expand. And it says, well, I'm already multitasking, Gemini. I've already got a lot going on, and I've got other things that I'm trying to also grow simultaneously. So for me to be able to do this, it makes me feel like the Two of Pentacles card, where you can't juggle both. This can also manifest as like partners that, you see as like, oh, dating becomes a chore, or partners that are saying, well, you work all the time, or you're not making time for me, or where are you? Pay attention to these conversations. Because it is possible that through the Mercury retrograde, and also when other planets go through Virgo, it's going to come into your 1st house, and you're going to go like, where am I actually either not self-focused enough, and I'm giving energy to people who I shouldn't be giving energy to, or people who I don't see a future with? Or am I, through the reevaluation process of the retrograde, being selfish, and am I not considering other people, and am I working too much? So you're going to get caught in the mutable square one way or another. You'll see it around Virgo season, and then you're going to have an eclipse in your 7th house. I personally feel like, that Jupiter in the 10th house is going to be about changing your status. And it means that you wouldn't possibly consider going official, or you may not possibly, consider stepping back from some of your work or making time for somebody, unless it's somebody who's like legitimately worth your time. Right? I think that's really what this is about with Saturn in the 7th house, that you're not going to give people time and cut away from your business unless it's something that you really feel like is a genuine match and it's a good connection. And you're also in Neptune square Neptune. So there's a lot of like, well, I'm not entirely sure where my relationships are going. I know they're going somewhere. But you're not wanting to give the reins to other people, and you're not just going to let other people kind of decide where the relationship is going, because they can with Saturn and Neptune retrograde kind of lead you astray, right? Like that can happen where people are like, well, I don't know what I want. You're like, what the hell are we doing? I would watch for when Jupiter and Saturn come into a square. So you'll see that obviously in August, and then you'll see that again in December. But that square is going to go hand in hand also with a Mars conjunction. Well, Mars conjunct Jupiter, I think, is pretty good. You're taking the North Node ruler, which is in your 8th house of change, vulnerability, intimacy, and Jupiter, which is about relationships and also home. I feel like this is about you breaking free and being like, where I haven't been as relationship focused, maybe I'm going to be for the right person, and also be more willing to be more public about being in my relationship. It's not a typical Jupiter Saturn square, because specifically Mars is involved. So I actually feel like it's taking a little bit of guts and confidence and the willingness to change in order to really break out of some of like the limitations that you've had previously in relationships and dating, because Saturn is retrograde. Even when we have the second square, because there's gonna be 3 actually. There's gonna be 2 that are gonna happen in Gemini and Pisces, and then there's gonna be 1 that's gonna happen in Cancer and Aries. But when you look at the one that's going to happen later in the year, in December, what's interesting about this is that this is going to be happening at a time where we will have just recently come out of a Mercury retrograde. And your Mercury, the retrograde in your 4th house, is going to be about your home and family, and it'll square Saturn, oppose Jupiter, square your ascendant. So I have a feeling it's going to be about having conversations at the end of the year about where you're living, where you want to live, how your living situation may change depending on a relationship and work. So I think this is like the preparatory period prior to that. And when this Mercury-Jupiter opposition happens, Saturn is the square, which means you're going to need a reliable, responsible, committed, adult relationship, somebody who you can kind of lean on if you were like, yeah, I do want to move, or, you know, I am now willing to like let you meet my family or whatever. So it's the preparation for that. I think Virgo risings have some pretty good stuff coming with the incoming eclipse that's going to be in your 7th house. Even though that is going to be an eclipse conjunct Neptune and Saturn, I think that is a part of the Jupiter-Saturn square, because look, it's squaring by 5 degrees. She says, I feel like I meet my business partner needs, so I can meet him where he's at, so he can get the money, the longevity, the money, consistency. Yeah. Yep. Preparing for inner world to be stable, Virgo risings is the best. Well, I think that, when Saturn leaves a house, he leaves a gift. And you're going to see Saturn leaving spring of next year. It'll come back into Pisces, but when it leaves, something about this retrograde makes me feel like there's going to be more solidarity going on in a relationship in a very big way with another person, especially with that North Node and Saturn meeting in the 7th. So I think that it is about kind of just making that space, creating that space for a significant relationship. And even though Saturn and Neptune are square Neptune, it means that you're going to learn that you don't have to feel like a gypsy, or you don't have to feel like you don't have roots, or that you can't be grounded. Like, there is going to be somebody who's going to come in, and I think they're going to kind of soften that and help you have some stability. And Saturn and Neptune will square the nodes. So it means that it may be like a really whimsical kind of like love story, that helps you with all that stuff. I'd love for it to be a husband. It's just not happened, so I don't really expect it. You're going to want to look at what's happening with Jupiter, right? So Jupiter is going to sit on your North Node. So when Jupiter sits on your North Node and it's coming into a trine with your descendant, something about like May, June of next year is potentially when there's going to be something significant that's going to break. And the North Node is going to sit on your Juno, and then there will be eclipses there as well. So there's an eclipse really close to your Juno in September of 2025. And then you're going to have another one here with Venus on your Juno in February of 26. You have to look at your progress chart and some other stuff, but I would say, like, with Saturn in the North Node going through there, I think that it's very likely that you're going to see a pretty significant relationship that's going to take place. Hopefully that's helpful for you. Keep me updated. All right, I've got Enchanted, and then Lisa. And then we've got CZ. He better be rich. Well, it's possible, especially with Jupiter that rules the 7th house. Very possible. Jupiter, Uranus, rich in a sense of culture, rich in a sense of freedom when it comes to home and living situation. All right, so let's pull up Crossroads. What's up, Enchanted? How are you doing? All right, so Enchanted said, I'm wondering if my life is going to drastically change soon. I always love reading your chart with all these 0 degrees in it. So ripe with potential. Dorothy says, I take rich in a sense of buying me tacos in a Tesla. I mean, there are some people that will do that. All right, so let's take a look at what's going on. So first of all, Pluto is retrograding back over your Mars. That's pretty important considering Mars rules your chart. So you may kind of feel like you're melting a little bit.
But that's going to be over here pretty soon. Pluto is going to retrograde back to Capricorn. That's going to be taking place in September. You get a little bit of a reprieve, and then it's going to come back and it's going to hit that again in the fall. So I would continue to watch that transit. As you know, Pluto brings pretty significant changes, right? And it brings also endings and beginnings. Pluto for you rules your 8th house of other people's money, resources, the occult, secrets. It's also the ruler of your moon. So it's really highlighting that natal Mars square moon, where there can be some intense exchanges that you have between women, family, friends, and financial entanglements. It could even be clients with the moon being in the 7th house. So it's not just Pluto conjunct Mars, which is heated, and there can definitely be a lot of agitation, frustration, things like that can pop up. But it's about how you transmute some of that frustration and you use it for power, right? So Pluto square your moon, I would just say this is going to bring up maybe, healing trauma revolving around home and family, loss in particular. Pluto can be death. So it can be bringing up trauma triggered to loss of family members, change of home, the need to transform something about your community, and like bringing people in that feel like family, and like learning how to feel empowered by the people that you're surrounding yourself with. 2 is that you also are getting ready to see a new moon right on your Saturn, right? So that's great. So a new moon, first of all, is planting a new seed. So when you're asking, like, is everything going to change? I think a new moon sitting on your Saturn is saying, well, this is giving you the opportunity to dream 12 degrees about what you could create. Okay, so Saturn rules your career. It also rules your networks, and this is about like your own personal business. The 5th house is your baby, right? So it could be your children, but it could also be your business if you're self-employed and if you're wanting to start new creative stuff. I would use this new moon to really set the stage for, okay, I need to create some kind of structure when it comes to my business, and reworking something about your schedule to bring in time for like new creative opportunities with your business. Vision boarding, images, pictures, sound, that's all kind of 12 degrees. And it makes a really nice trine to your Venus. And so this is also like a self-indulgent, self-love, learning how to play, creating that time to play kind of energy, right? So much about Mercury going retrograde in Virgo back into Leo is like, where do we get so caught up in the grind and it becomes so monotonous that we don't make time to date our partners, or we don't make time to play without some kind of financial incentive or like whatever. So I think it's about creating that time to feel inspired again, right? And giving yourself a little bit of a break or a reworking of your routine so that way you can make that happen. Some really, really beautiful aspects with the trines to Venus and your North Node. And I think the sextile to Mars, your chart ruler, and Jupiter says it may be about designing a tarot deck or creating a new website or creating some content, or maybe it's going to be about writing something that's going to be creative. And putting something together in that capacity. So yeah, that also does bring on change. And then you're going to have a pretty big full moon, I'm sure you know, but that's going to be pretty close to your sun. So that's going to be right around August 19th, 2024. It'll be right on top of your sun, which does make me feel like it's about kind of coming to a completion of some creative ideas and things you've been kind of like working on. And then the square to Uranus is like, okay, well, could I make money off of it? Can I sell this thing? Is it complete? That kind of stuff. And watch that Mercury retrograde taking place in your 6th house. That's definitely health related. And with Pluto conjunct Mars, be very careful with cuts, burns, abrasions, because this Mercury retrograde is going to in conjunct and quincunx Mars, right? Am I missing anything? And North Node conjunct Venus is attracting people to you. Clients, your marketplace, romantic partners. It's a time of like really embracing the Venus on your ascendant. I would be wearing a lot of reds if I were you. So anything red or bronze or warm, you may notice there's like more of a tendency of looking flush or feeling warmer with the North Node on your Venus there, and also Pluto conjunct your Mars. Yeah, red. But that's going to be embracing that, and that's going to bring people in. That's going to attract people in. Like you could make your website warmer colors. You could take headshots and stuff for, you know, your professional stuff in warmer colors. You could change fonts and other things. It's going to attract more people with the North Node on your Venus right now. And yeah, Chiron's getting close. It's retrograde pretty soon, so it's not quite on your South Node, but you know, you're also coming in your Chiron return. And I feel like that's about letting go of this idea that you have to heal everybody, right? But that's a little bit in the future, but it's coming up. You're going to start to see that. Part of the Mercury retrograde is that there's a sense of like overdoing it or overworking yourself with some of this retrograde going on here, trine Chiron. You know, it's almost like, and I've been thinking about this a lot with like the Mercury retrograde, is like you have to create the space for creativity to come. So you might be feeling like, well, I don't know what I want to do or what I want to make. You have to create that time, right? Next time I'll ask you to compare the moon charge. What does that mean? Or the moon change? Oh, that's why I'm trying to move. Yeah, and that's also part of Pluto's square the moon. So you want to be really careful with like who you're moving in with or who you're living around and all kinds of that stuff. I've had Pluto square the moon. That's not a fun transit. I'm sorry. Well, I had Jupiter, Pluto, and Saturn all square my moon at the same time. So I don't know which one was the culprit, but it was pretty fucking bad. It was not a good situation. But when you come out of it, it's going to be great because, you know, I think that it's all about new things that you're beginning. Really, you're going somewhere where you're going to have more community, in my opinion. And don't underestimate Pluto sextile your ascendant. Like, this is a time where you can completely revamp around, like, everything around, like, who you are. Like, I think you're going to move. I think there's going to be a complete change in how you're dressing and how you're presenting yourself. That seems to be, like, what's kind of coming, you know? So hopefully that's helpful. You'll have to let me know what happens with this full moon on the 19th because that looks pretty eventful with completing some creative stuff or at least some plans, you know. All right, so we have Lisa, and I want to make sure I have the right Lisa here. Let's see. Is it Lisa C? There she is. January 1475. Enchanted, there's definitely a move coming, but keep in mind that there will be a Mars, Jupiter in your third moving. It'll square Saturn. So it's about whether or not you have enough privacy. And then later in the year, Mars will go retrograde in your fourth house. So make sure you're moving where you would like to move so you're not moving again. Thanks, Lisa. I just want to make sure that was you before I put up some random person's chart on the internet. She says, I recently ended a 5-year with a Sag Aqua rising on and off. It was so reflecting my childhood wounds for us each. Talk about attraction, fire and air. Kaboom! Well, I'm sorry to hear that. You know, I'm not entirely surprised by this as you're ruled by the sun, right? The sun is our creativity, our happiness, our joy, our ego, our inner child. And the opposition to Pluto has been brewing this week, which means that you're realizing, I got to do me. There's too much intensity going on with another person. And then you're also getting ready to see Mercury retrograde into your first house where you're reworking something about who you are and like what your goals are outside of a relationship. And Venus is also coming into a square with Uranus, which could mean that you're stepping out and there's like a status change because Uranus rules relationships. I think about how, you know, there's going to be a pretty big full moon that's coming in August around the 19th. That's going to be in your 7th house. And part of me is like, okay, it's done, but it almost seems like there's more that's going to shake out. Just fair warning. She says, lifelong lessons in relationships. Recently, men are drawn to me, but I see through and recognize old patterns and tests. Can you please tell me about love and relationships? Well, part of this is Pluto, right? So now Pluto is in your whole sign 7th house. So even though it's not there quite yet, it is within range. Some astrologers will use like 10 degrees. They will use a full 10-degree orb. So if we work with that, Pluto is within range of your Mercury, which is going to be your mind and also your communication with other people, your values when it comes to relationships, whether or not you're willing to drop somebody like it's hot. And simultaneously, it's trining the South Node, so it's doing some kind of clearing. And it's getting really close to Venus as well, which is going to represent the past and home and family stuff. So all the stuff that you're saying kind of checks out. I think really for me also, it's the fact that Pluto is squaring Uranus. So it's saying through major transformations, purging, seeing the shadow in relationships, it's bringing up where there's been a lot of instability or not feeling safe or secure when it comes to your home, which had some kind of emotional impact on you, right? Uranus and Scorpio in the fourth is like a lot of trauma revolving around security, or sometimes it's abuse. Sometimes it's about learning that, you know, home is not safe, or it's hard to find emotional kind of security with people. And when you look at Uranus, it squares your Mercury. So there's already tension in communicating with people. Do you have issues with one of your siblings? Mercury's conjunct Venus square Uranus. So do you feel like there's been like a family member or a relative that's very hot and cold with you, and like they can kind of like cut you off and like become indifferent, and so you're kind of seeing something similar happening in like a relationship and you don't like it? Look, the Pluto transit's going to be a long road, girl, okay? You're going to have Pluto for the better part of like almost the next 20 years. So even though Pluto was not conjunct your Mercury or your Venus yet, could that be a transformation of the relationship you have with a sibling and not a doomsday situation with a relationship? Yeah, sure, that's possible, yeah. But I think the truth of the matter is that if you want to navigate the next like 15, 20 years better with relationships, this is about knowing that Pluto is about to go back into your whole sign 6. So there's going to be a sense of readdressing your habits, your tendencies in relationships, and also your health as well. Mercury is retrograding in your first house in opposition to all of this, which means you're like, I need to separate myself from the identity of another person. You have Venus in your 7th house. You have the moon in the 7th house. You're never going to have an issue meeting people, right? Moon in the 7th house people have a lot of relationship changes throughout their life. They have several long-term relationships generally. And because they like companionship, they have a tendency to kind of go, you know, relationship to relationship. Sometimes you have a lot of Aquarius, so it could be a little different for you. But usually right around the time you hit 42 to like 48, that's when a 7th house moon really matures. And they have realized what they need in relationships through kind of seeing what they don't like. So the long and short of it is like you're kind of in that time period now. And, you know, whatever lessons that you've learned with Saturn having gone through there the last 2 or 3 years, now it's finally putting an end to some of those patterns. And it's like, it's time to evolve. When you see a positive transit involving Saturn or Uranus, a relationship will stick. Right now you got Saturn over your Jupiter, which basically means that a relationship is ending. There is some psychological shift that comes from that, or there is some healing that can come from that. And it is directly connected to your childhood. Jupiter rules your 5th house. So it's a lot of like working with the inner child, having some realizations about what you need to heal. Meditation and hypnosis can be really helpful with that right now. And then we've also got Uranus, which is not really doing anything at the moment. You're going to see some squares, but it's not really doing anything that's kind of harming you. It's still slightly harmonizing with the trine to your sun. So it means change your habits, change your life, change your status. Everything kind of follows suit. And I think really the whole next month is about kind of pulling the energy back into yourself and being like, no, I'm not going to lose myself in another person again. I'm not going to get stuck there. It may mean that you have to rework something about your communication style or reinvest energy in yourself and not be so readily available for another person. You've also got retrogrades that's about to happen over your Juno, girl. You're going to see this at the beginning of next year. Juno is about marriage. So when the North Node hits Juno, this is going to be like January of 25. Venus is going to go through there. Saturn's going to go through there. There's going to be retrogrades there. Like, I think possibly the very beginning of next year, there's going to be a very significant person that's going to come into your life. Sometime January through April. But I can see that because of the retrogrades with the North Node on your Juno, and I can see that because Juno is going to transit your North Node. This means that some partner of destiny is going to come into your life. And I think that you're much, 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 much better off focusing on what's new that's coming in the future and kind of creating the healthier habits, and also kind of reworking and healing who you are before that person shows up, because you don't get rewarded without doing that work. It's very obvious to me with some of the aspects in your chart. And you don't need me to tell you, but go and listen to any astrologer worth their salt. Mars in the retrograde later this year is going to turn retrograde about 6 degrees. That's right on your ascendant. It's going to oppose Pluto, which means if you go back to a relationship, there's likely going to be some kind of power struggles. So just I'm planting that seed now and letting you know, if you are tempted to go back or think things are going to change, you may find yourself in a situation that you're just like, I wish that I had actually really walked away later in the year. So really take the month of August and work with the retrograde to kind of like, rest up and heal and put yourself as kind of like the main priority. Okay. Hopefully that's helpful for you. All right. So we got all of our level 3 people. Let me add in a couple of these new ones. And thank you guys for your patience. I appreciate it. If you guys haven't already liked the stream, please do. And also subscribe to the channel. I'm trying to hit 50,000 subscribers this year. We're getting close. We're almost to 36. We are getting close. That's all I want for Christmas. That has been my number. All right, so let's pull this up, because PayPal they're constantly reworking their site. It drives me absolutely insane. Every time I sign on, it's a different format. Apologies. Thank you guys, I appreciate it. Come on, you can do it. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to add a couple of these newbies that popped in here really quick, like Rosalie, Rachel, and Rebecca. So you guys give me just a second. I'm going to add these, and we'll go from there. All right. Okay, so let me add these guys. So we've got Rosalie, Rachel, and Rebecca. All right, cool. Thank you, I got you. Okay, so we are going to start with Camille. And it sounded like we're doing a synastry. I'm going to have to scroll back up here and pull up Camille's chart with this other person and read her question. So the 3 R's. Okay, so let's see, where is she? There we go. All right, so Camille, you are on the inside, the Sag rising, Sun in Pisces, Moon in Scorpio, and your partner or the other person is on the outside. She says, I'm in love with my friend who has been diagnosed with ALS. He's going through a lot right now. I know he loves me too, but there hasn't been any concrete movement on his end. I want to know if there will be. So you're March 10th, 85, and that was in France, and they are July 23rd, 1980. In New York, and you're currently in New York. Okay. So, looking just at your stuff, you know, part of what's going on is Jupiter is sitting in your first house. And here, let me just show you. Excuse me, Jupiter's sitting in your 7th house. So, you know, wanting to be partnered with another person. And Jupiter and Mars are going to start coming into a square with Saturn. So it's about wanting to be together, but there's a limiting situation because of home, because of emotions, because of setbacks, because of challenges. Health actually deals with your 12th house. So when you think about 6 houses from the 7th, their health is your 12th house, ruled by Mars. Mars has been in conjunction to Chiron, and Mars is going to conjunct Jupiter, and it's going to square Saturn, which means that there is going to be some more challenges in being able to kind of come together in the immediate next month or so until this starts to separate. It's also Jupiter square Saturn, so it can represent that person being like, I don't know where my life is going at the moment, and making it difficult to actually be able to connect with another person. Your relationships is ruled by Mercury. And the North Node is coming in conjunction with Mercury, which means you're going to be more vocal and communicative about how you feel about them, wanting to be there for them, wanting to support them. And I really don't think there's any stopping that train, to be really honest with you. Actually, to be really frank, you know, Saturn's going to come into conjunction with Mercury. And there's going to be some retrogrades there in the spring of 2025. It's possible that in the spring of 2025, when that happens, there is a sense of wanting to be more closely connected to a partner or be residing with them or be helping them in some way, shape, or form. That's actually very likely, actually, especially with Chiron kind of hovering around your Venus and your Mars. Anyway, when I look at their astrology, okay, so, and I look at what they've got going on right now, they have Mars and Uranus in the 7th house, so it's inconsistent breaks and patterns with relationships. Relationships for them are ruled by Venus, and it looks like when it comes to Venus, Jupiter is coming in conjunction with Venus. So it means that a partner's gonna be like, hey, I want to help you, you know, and you know, people who have Venus in the 7th, in the 8th house, sometimes they can be afraid of relationships and commitment, especially in Gemini. There's some sense of fear of vulnerability. So Saturn going through his 4th means that he's feeling emotionally blocked, or he's feeling like burdened by home or emotions and like limited by a living situation that's keeping him from being able to be heart open to a partner. As Jupiter hits that, that person's going to be like, I'm here for you. I want to be with you. How can we make this happen? He's going through some difficult transits. I don't think it's just the Saturn Neptune in the 4th. I think it's the Saturn Neptune square Neptune, where his physical stuff is making him possibly feel emotionally down. This is also in opposition to his Saturn, so it's taking away from the focus on work, responsibility, and independence, and it's forcing him to focus on his home and his emotions. The South Node is also on his Mars, which means that there is like a sense of loss of motivation, or there can be issues that's kind of going on with his body that's affecting his sleep and also his routines. And Pluto is opposing his Sun. These are a lot of difficult oppositions. Pluto in opposition to the Sun, people don't always get that transit, and it does bring up some really heavy challenges. And for a Scorpio rising, you know, Pluto rules their chart, so it means that this for him is very much mental and communication related, and limitations, especially when it comes to communication or travel. And then Saturn opposed Saturn. I almost look at this and I feel like because work has been such a priority in his life and he's prioritized that, or independence or responsibility over other things, all of these oppositions are now trying to get him to focus on communication, home, family, like, and it's doing it in a way that's quite literally kind of grounding him, which is, it's probably a really difficult thing to watch, because he's probably really frustrated with feeling like he doesn't want to be a burden. That's kind of the interpretation that I get. Anyway, I think probably one of the best things is that Jupiter is going to come into conjunction with his Venus. And I think that that is going to be really healing for him, but it's going to require him to be vulnerable and to be open and to be honest and not to be afraid. When we put the two charts together, you know, you're more asking like, is this going to be a relationship where, you know, we're going to come together? It's not so much like a synastry question. So looking at your midpoint composite of the two charts together, You're a Sagittarius rising, Scorpio moon, and the sun is in Taurus. And look at that, Sun, Venus, Chiron, and Mercury in the 6th house, and Uranus is there right now. So it's kind of being like, you know, you probably get frustrated and you're like, just tell me how I can help you. What do you need? Or like, let me be there for you, you know? Together, this chart makes a full moon. So this basically means that there is a pretty significant dynamic between the two of you. You know, the 12th house can be healing and it can be past life related and very intuitive. And the 6th house can be about health, habits, and support. This chart is ruled by Jupiter. And I personally can tell you with a chart like his, possibly one of the things that may be holding him back from really being completely all in a relationship right now is that he doesn't want to be a burden to somebody. That's the impression that I get looking at his chart. That he doesn't know the path of what's going to happen with his health stuff, and so he's not entirely sure how he would navigate a relationship. It doesn't mean he couldn't or he's not open to it, but I kind of get the vibe of that in his chart. And when you start to see the square happen in mid-August, when Jupiter and Mars in your 7th house square Saturn, you know, there can be some difficult conversations about like, well, what happens if my health issues, you know, continue to show up? What happens if it starts to kind of, get worse? Then what? And so he may be holding back because of some of that stuff, because the end of life or Saturn in the 4th house is about care and responsibility. And that's going to trigger a square to Saturn and Neptune, right? And then you got all this Virgo going through here too. I do feel like this is a relationship that's supposed to be about healing and support. Whether or not you guys end up together, I think the answer is going to be more revolving around what is going to be taking place down the road. I think about how Jupiter will eventually sit on your guys' north node, and it could materialize possibly as like a combining of resources or a combining of a home or a living situation down the road, but not right now. That would be something that would happen after your guys' Mars return, the spring of next year, and then Jupiter kind of going into the 8th house. It can be about some kind of merger and being a little bit more involved. And then Uranus goes into your 7th house. And that's going to be a bigger turning point kind of spring into summer of 2025, which I saw in your chart anyway. I thought that Saturn and Neptune kind of coming into conjunction with your Mercury is being like, look, I want to have as much time with you as possible, or I want to be closer to you, or I want to kind of be in a space where we can be together. So it's possible those things could be happening next year. But for right now, I think Uranus going back and forth over Chiron and Mercury is that there's issues in the relationship, quite literally, because of health problems and the impact that that's having on communication and, psychological stuff. You may feel that it gets to like a turning point where you're going to give this probably until about mid-November of 2024. When this full moon comes through and it sits right on the sun and it brings up your guys' kind of natal polarity, where you're going to want a little bit more definitive answer one way or the other. And this is ruled by Venus, and Venus is on the south node. So that does make me feel like that's the timeline of how long this will go before you're like, what are we doing? Are you in or are you out? And that'll be 7th house to his sun. Not to his sun. That'll be in his 7th house. So for you, that's going to be taking place on the cusp of your 6th. And Mercury rules the 7th, and you're going to see that Mercury is going to be in opposition to Jupiter square Saturn. So yeah, I give it about till November, and I would say be patient with him, because I think it's, once again, I can see he's such like an independent person, and there's such a focus with his 10th house energy that he likes to be the boss and have it together and have everything in charge and like all of that stuff. And I really kind of feel like this could be one of those situations where he realizes that he can't do everything himself. I mean, look, he's got Saturn square Venus and Neptune. Until he's in a situation where he sees something kind of break down, it could be his health or his emotional health, or it could be something, physical or financial, then he starts to realize the value that relationships really have, right? And he's also been in his Uranus opposition. So somebody was supposed to come in and help him kind of get grounded and get stable. And I think with Venus being in the 8th house, he was going to meet somebody while he was going through some big transformation or some kind of crisis. So I think it's about kind of being like, look, I'm not just going to leave because you're going through this, like, let me help you. How can I be there for you? And a lot of it is going to be later in the year with Pluto in opposition to his sun, that he's going to have to make some pretty sweeping, dramatic changes in regards to his home or his living situation. And that will have an impact on his career because Mars will be going retrograde, right? Come back around that full moon in November, because I'm curious to see how some of this stuff pans out. You know, if you can kind of be disarming with him, because Scorpio risings, you know, they kind of put their spikes out. But if you can be disarming with him, I think that he may actually let you win with Jupiter on his Venus. Hopefully that's helpful for you, Camille. All right, so we have got, let's see, who else do we have? There we go. Okay, so we have got, who is next? Danielle. All right, and she's got another person for me to take a look at here. And looks like that's the Taurus. All right, so let's see what Danielle says. She says, hey Candace, looking to get a synastry reading for a friend that came back into my life. Thank you, I appreciate that. This full moon kicked my butt, never heard from my Libra. Okay. Yeah, so two full moons in your 7th house definitely brings a lot of attention when it comes to relationships. So Danielle is the Cancer rising. She's the sun in Taurus and moon in Aries. So she wants to know about the synastry between her and this Taurus, who happens to have a moon in Leo. And yeah, let's take a look at your guys' synastry. So a couple things. His sun sits right on your point of fortune. I like that. I feel like that's like opening the door to something that can be helping you fulfill your wishes or your goals, right? The point of fortune is not necessarily good or bad. You have to look at like the Sabian for it. But in the 11th house, it's somebody who like could be a very good friend and somebody who opens the door to better understanding what it is that you need, because it's ruled by Mercury and you have Mercury on your Venus. So it's communicating and expressing what you need in relationships. So that in itself, I think, is great. You guys are born, obviously, you know, relatively close together within a year. So you're going to have things like Neptune to Neptune. And you're also going to have some similar conjunctions with Pluto and Uranus. So that doesn't really faze me. Probably what piqued my interest is the fact that he does seem to have Juno right on your North Node, which I kind of like that synastry. I feel like I've seen that for a number of people, and it's like it's the spouse or the partnership that you get that you didn't know you needed. It may have not necessarily been the person you would have first gone for, but it does represent somebody who shows you commitment and compatibility in some sense that teaches you what relationships are about. So I've seen that in a lot of charts of people who are married. I think that placement is interesting, and you know, it trines your moon, which is your, you know, your chart ruler. So that North Node Juno conjunction trine moon does feel fun, creative, passionate, but also like it can feel very solid because it's happening in the 2nd house. So something you can hold on to. Lots of Virgo in this chart. Saturn in Virgo, you know, trines your Venus. That's good for commitment. Mars in Virgo trines your Mars. That's great for, you know, compatibility physically. Jupiter trines your Mars. I mean, this is great aspects. Your guys' Mars are seeing each other. Venus does form a sextile. His Venus is in your 12th house. So it does feel like something that can be a little behind the scenes, a little private, a little bit more, you know, kind of hidden. And obviously he's got planets in your 11th house. So it could also be like, well, is he a friend? Is he something more? Something that I'll tell you is that he is going through Uranus in conjunction to his sun. Okay, so that does make me feel like there's definitely going to be some shocks and surprises that are kind of going on for him right now. So he's a Taurus rising, Taurus sun, and Uranus is on his ascendant. Oh my goodness. So there's going to be lots of changes going on with his home and his living situation. Between Uranus hitting his 4th house lord and a Mercury retrograde that's going to be happening over his 4th house, unless you're his Mercury person and it's about a romantic partner from the past. So I'm wondering if that's about you guys like kind of had a connection and now you're reconnecting. I could see that. He's got Venus, which is his chart ruler in the second house in Cancer. Pretty solid, pretty reliable. He should be pretty chatty with the Mercury Sun in the first house. And this is also somebody who's pretty independent, on the move, North Node Moon in the third. You have Uranus on his descendant. You're the person that he doesn't always see coming, but I think he's kind of used to that in relationships because he's got that natally. And you got a ton of planets in the 12th house. So it's interesting that I was like, what is this kind of behind the scenes, like hidden thing that you guys have? You might be a bit of a wild card for him. Like it might be really hard for him to read you, even though you guys are both Tauruses and you have a lot of Taurus in your chart. The 12th house can mean like unfinished business. It could mean that there is a connection that you guys have, but he's almost afraid of the vulnerability or kind of, you know, being seen or being exposed. And he's going through some buck wild transits. Uranus on his sun, and then also like the Mercury retrograde. I'm wondering, like, you know, is he moving or is he having a lot of stuff going on with his family? Like there's something that's going to be happening there that's going to make him feel like he wants to sporadically either travel or get up or go somewhere else. Not saying he can't be in a relationship, but as Uranus is crossing his ascendant, it is opposing his descendant. So this sense of needing freedom and spontaneity, you know, it does change his home and it also does impact his relationships. Now, something to think about is that, you know, this Mercury retrograde is going to be right on top of his Mars. So it could be about reevaluating a relationship or making a connection with somebody before he does start making some big, more kind of serious changes with his home or his living situation. I feel like the astrology, like his chart with yours is actually pretty decent. Like worst case scenario, there's still a solid friendship there. But your astrology with his makes me feel like there can be this feeling of there's so much 12th house stuff that it can be a very intuitive connection. You're dreaming about each other. You guys feel like there's something that's pulling you two together. But with all the oppositions to Uranus, you know, it's very likely that you're going to see a lot of instability on his part. And it has nothing to do with you. I think that you may scare him a little bit because there is a sense of like you being able to read him or seeing through things. And that can make somebody uncomfortable. A lot of 12th house synastry like this can make people very uncomfortable because they're like, I just can't put my finger on it. There's some connection here, and he can kind of like wig out a little bit. Communication is important though. If he's got moon in the third house, I feel like, you know, your planets all square his moon. So it does push him to communicate and to speak up and not just rely on the fact that you can kind of read him very well. And the planets that square the nodes are also saying that you're coming together to kind of clear something up. So if this is going to be a relationship that's going to be something that's going to stick, I would say like, you can't get stuck being in the 12th house. It can't be like a hidden thing. You know, it's going to try to kind of come out and be something that's more public. And you just have to keep in mind this person is going to need a lot of freedom the next year or two with Uranus on their ascendant. That's not going to be something that's going to kind of wind down. When he has a very significant, you know, transit to his Mars or something involving Pluto, you know, you're going to see a change that's going to happen for him in regards to his relationships. But, you know, Mars and Pluto are going to oppose each other. So that tells me that there can be a change that's going on in terms of like the communication in some sense in November with a relationship. And then when Mars comes into conjunction with Jupiter, there is like more of an uptick potentially in relationship stuff in the summer of 2025. But the more you talk to him, the more that you're going to see. This is like the kind of energy where he's like, I'm quitting my job and I'm like, you know, relocating and like, I don't want to live here anymore. I'm going somewhere new. And that's going to be hard to maintain some sense of stability while Uranus is making some of the aspects that it's going to be making, right? Anyway, I hope that that's helpful. Sorry about the Libra. I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised. All right. So who else do we have? We've got, let's see, we've got Marissa, Amber, Kiki. All right, so let's pull up Marissa. Thank you guys for your patience. I appreciate it. There we go. Marissa says August 25th, 84 in the Bronx. And she says, hey Candace, what's the astrology looking like for me? Can you share whatever you see that's coming to look out for any advice? Thanks for all that you do. Appreciate it. All right, well, you're ruled by Mars because you're an Aries rising. And, oh, well, yeah, I got some stuff for you. My God, how the current astrology is very pertinent to you right now. So I love all those planets in the 5th house. I feel like this is a time that I would really pay attention because the Mercury retrograde, which you were born with, by the way, so you might manage it a little bit better, but Mercury is going to turn retrograde from Virgo back into Leo, and it's going to go through your sun, okay? And the sun is about romance and love and creativity, and it's going to meet with Venus. So this tells me that there's like a chance connection or a chance meeting around August 7th. Pay attention to, well, maybe a little bit earlier. Maybe I would say August 5th through the 7th because the moon's going to go through there. So Venus represents relationships. It'll conjunct Mercury. Changes with health, changes with diet, changes with work schedule. Maybe there can be a little bit of a rift that can happen with a female coworker, but this can mean that you're reconnecting with somebody from the past. And then Venus is going to sit on your sun. So this is a good time for if you're wanting to get back into dating, or if you want to plan a date night for you and a significant other, or you're wanting to kind of bring the romance and the spice back, that's a good time to do it. And Mercury is going to go retrograde all the way to about 21 degrees. And it'll sit on your moon, which is going to be about your emotions in regards to romance. And there's also a Kazimi. It's like the whole chart is lit up in August. Are you single? Because I have a feeling you might meet someone, or there's going to be something that's going to happen here. You know, the 5th house is like theaters, shows, bars, casinos. Make time to go out and have fun. I'm not saying you have to spend a bunch of money or do anything, but like make time to go and like be in places that are going to be different, because that's going to be really good for the opportunity to kind of meet people and connect romantically. 2. The Mars-Jupiter conjunction that's coming is really big for an Aries rising chart. So you're going to hear it's in your 3rd house, which is like, I want to go on a vacation, or I'm going to, impulsively buy a car or a gadget or something. It's in your 2nd house. So like impulse spending on gadgets, impulse spending on travel, on vehicles, like watch it, because there can be a sense of there being unforeseen setbacks or circumstances. Be very careful when it comes to communicating, sending emails, or talking to like mutual employees, right? The Mercury retrograde in your 6th house can actually bring up some issues with other employees, but that square to Saturn means that you may say something, write something, text something, email something that comes back to bite you in the ass. So I'd be really cautious about running your mouth in mid-August because it can get you into some trouble. I would also say don't be spending a bunch of money on Gemini things if you can help it. Try to practice restraint and wait and know that it's not a good time to be making an impulse buy. And then you are also going to see that in September, Pluto's retrograding back. I know it's a ways away, but Pluto is starting to come back into a square with your ascendant and a descendant, which is at 29 degrees, which is critical. This tells me that there's critical turning points happening when it comes to either your status or your career. And like you're going to be feeling the pressure again for about like 2.5 months. So think about like what happened in 2020 when Saturn was in Capricorn. It was squaring that. That could have been a trying time in your career. And man, it's not just, Pluto square your ascendant and your descendant. It's also Pluto square Pluto. This tells me it's like the final phase of like dealing with like lots of power struggles or imbalances in regards to relationships. And this can be with clients, it can be with romantic partners, it can be with, people you work with. But that's pretty significant, the fact that it's your final Pluto square. These are the midlife crisis transits that we have, and you've got a lot of heavy karma with relationships with Saturn and Pluto in your 7th. So you're kind of moving through that with this square. But my goodness, this retrograde that's going to be happening in your 5th might actually bring the magic back. And it may bring opportunities for you to reconnect and make more time for creativity, hobbies, dating, relationships. And it can bring you an opportunity to be like, I'm going on a road trip, I'm going somewhere. You can do something like that. Just know that Mercury retrograde does say that there's going to be some changes going on with your health or your habits in some capacity. So you know, that square that's taking place is to Uranus in the Mercury retrograde. So it means there can be some unexpected personal changes. It's in your first house when it comes to how you have fun, and you may feel a little bit more spontaneous than usual. Hopefully that's helpful for you, giving you some insight. Yeah, really, really interesting stuff with those retrogrades. It's going to be really prominent for relationships for you. All right, so we've got Amber, Kiki, Corey, and then Yulia. All right, let's pull up Amber. And Amber is a synastry as well. All right, I think there was special instructions with this one, so let me read that. All right, so we're going to be doing synastry for Amber and her other person. She says, we've had 2 dates this year, but when he came to my city, it's been moving very slow. Anytime he's going through a hard time, I have a dream about him, like a dream of him needing a hug. I will give him a hug in the dream and then reach out to him, and then he admits he's going through a hard time. I noticed his moon is in my 12th house, and I've got a lot of planets in the 12th house. My intuition tells me we would make a fortune together, but what is the purpose of us being brought together? He was in my town this week and reached out, but I was too... Hold on, I can't read everything. What does it say? But I was too... Come on. PayPal leaving me on a cliffhanger. Sorry, guys. Come on. Oh, now it's not going to load. Okay. So I assume you're asking, you know, what the synastry is, what the deal is with the two of you. I apologize, but it's not loading your entire question for some reason. So let me try one more time. Let's see if I can get it. Come on. No, it doesn't want to do it. All right. So if there's any other information, let me know. Too busy to meet with him. Okay, cool. All right. So you're the Pisces rising with the moon in Virgo and the sun in Cancer. All right. So relationships is Mercury. So both Mercury retrograde, which is coming up, is going to impact you. And also transits to your natal Mercury. And your natal Mercury is in Gemini. So Saturn's in your first house, where you feel limited sometimes by situations when it comes to communicating with other people. And you feel like more responsibility, you're trying harder, you're pushing harder, you're being patient when it comes to communicating with people. That's part of the Saturn square. It's going to be done later this year. I think very much about Virgo season. So really kind of like the third week of August on, while Mercury is still retrograding and planets are starting to come into conjunction with your moon. So it's about having a conversation with a romantic partner and being like, what are we doing? As planets start to, you know, come into opposition with Saturn and Neptune in your first house, I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. You know, you're going to basically look around and you're going to go, I can only help somebody who wants to help themselves. I can only be there for somebody who wants me to be there. I can, you know, open the door, but if they're not willing to kind of step through it, you may find yourself actually backing off a little bit in Virgo season, because you're coming into an eclipse in your first house where you're prioritizing yourself over another person. You're going to create better boundaries. It is also going to square Neptune, which means you're going to be like, you know, I may not be entirely sure about what direction I'm going in with a relationship. And if they're not having any clarity, I'm going to take a, step back. I'm not saying you need to end anything or that you need to kind of have any definitive conversations, but I think that you will naturally take a bit of a step back. And then 2 weeks later, at the beginning of October, you know, that you're going to have an eclipse that's going to be in Libra in conjunction to your Mars, which you may actually see that that's lighting a fire underneath his butt a little bit and is bringing somebody in. Why? It'll be on your Mars, so it's about action. The 8th house of passion, it's right on top of the sun. So if that does happen the way I think it will, August into September, don't worry about it. Just take a step back. Let him come back to you. If there's been communication, misunderstandings, or breakdown, you know, the Mercury retrograde can be positive, and it is going to be right on your descendant. So it can be about you being like, okay, are we on the same page or not? Synastry-wise, you have Sun-Mars conjunction, so that's great for like passion, and that's great for there being a lot of chemistry. He does have Venus conjunct Saturn in Scorpio. So that can be more difficult in vulnerability and opening up. Yeah, you guys can make money together because you have Pluto and Jupiter in conjunction. Sure. You also have a South Node Jupiter conjunction as well. Usually when you have people who have their planets in your 12th house, you will have dreams about them, right? And so in your case, the moon represents your 5th house of, romance and connections, but also the 6th house of healing. Purpose is going to be more driven from the North Node. And the truth is you guys have a North Node Venus conjunction. So it's very obvious to me that you guys have come together, and that Venus, it's a wide trine, but it trines the moon. North Node Venus is about learning more about love in relationships, learning more about growth and togetherness. That's why you're here. Venus is in Gemini though, so it's going to be about learning how to communicate and express love and your needs and your feelings better. Really good for him because the North Node's in Taurus. So with your Venus conjunct the North Node, yeah, you can help him make money or feel more secure or feel more stable, right? When I flip it around, he's a Scorpio rising and he's got Venus and Saturn on the ascendant. So that can be really difficult when it comes to self-love and seeing his own values. And the South Node's hovering over his sun. So is he having some work changes that's going on? Is he quitting his job? Did he get laid off? Is he wanting to leave a company? Is there something like that happening? Because that's kind of what's going on with the South Node transit over his sun. It can be a very private person because he's got whole sign sun in the 12th and he's got moon in the 4th, and these are in air signs, so they can be a little bit more kind of distant or they can be a little bit more detached. Yeah, he's having work issues. I mean, I think his job's going to change. If it's not going to change here in the next month with the retrograde, I think he's probably looking for a new job or looking for some opportunity through a friend, but it will change. He's going to have a job change. The eclipse on his sun says it, and the retrograde in his 10th house says it. And, money is important to him because he's got so many planets in the 2nd house. Anyway, why did you guys come together? Your Venus is on the North Node. You can help enrich relationships and help him when it comes to money and resources. Your sun's on his vertex. It means that you help him embrace change and transformation and vulnerability, right? Yeah, you guys can be business partners here. Your Chiron's on his North Node, so you help heal issues revolving around self-worth. So he may feel like he has to make money to be somebody who is, valuable or worthwhile. So you can kind of heal some of those issues. I like the trines to Pluto and Jupiter in the ascendant. I like Ceres on top of Venus and Saturn too. Like he misses you when you guys aren't connected or when you don't see each other. But I think he's going through it. I know he's going through it. And Uranus hitting his North Node is about somebody coming into his life that's going to radically change and kind of shake things up in the way that he sees love and relationships and the fact that he holds himself back. Right? So I kind of feel like actually you coming into his life is about you being like, dude, like get it together, like you have to be willing to make changes in relationships and kind of consider other options or other people. And like, you'll positively influence that. And you're also going to be making him realize that, he is not here to do everything alone. South Node's in the 1st house. He's here to learn how to kind of work with other people. So it can mean that you start having conversations about being like, well, what if we did something together? What if we were together more? What if we, lived closer to each other? Uranus in the North Node is going to throw him into a relationship pretty quickly. That's what it's trying to do. But there seems to be a matter of living situation stuff that can kind of get in the way of that right now. But that may actually change later in the year when he does have some job changes and he's more so willing maybe to relocate or, make a change with his life. But for right now, there's a lot of moving parts in his astrology. And I think because both of you guys have some 12th house overlays, there's going to be some really strong themes of feeling very intuitively kind of connected or meeting in a dream space. And, obviously your Saturn sitting in his 12th house with, Pluto and Jupiter means that you guys are able to kind of communicate in a more etheric way. Maybe meditation and trying to kind of get in touch with him that way might be a good way to kind of let him know, like, pick a lane, get with it, or it's time for me to kind of cut you loose or let you go. But the purpose, I think, is here to help him when it comes to realizing he has more than one option when it comes to partnerships and support, and that he can't do it alone. Hopefully that's helpful for you, Amber. We got Kiki, Corey, and then Yulia. Okay. Let's pull up Kiki. You're welcome. What's up, girl? I hope you're doing well. All right, let's pull up your question here. All right, she says, hey, Candace. Well, with the unexpected craziness of my husband getting promoted here in Washington, not moving to Texas now, our house was all packed up to now a kitchen remodel and fights with my husband's family last week. My Reiki business is not taking off like I had thought. I haven't silversmithed in months now, just looking for some guidance on where I should direct my energy and light right now. I used to co-host monthly women's circles, and I don't even feel like my energy is aligned for those at the moment. Kind of lost, appreciate your help. All right, let's suss this out. Let's see what's going on. Let's look at just Kiki. There we go. All right, so she's an Aquarius rising, and she has got the Sun in Scorpio and the Moon in Gemini. So where is all of this stress coming from? Well, in my mind, a number of things. One is, being an Aquarius rising, the Mars-Uranus conjunction that's happened over the last month has been sudden, unexpected situations happening within the home. That can be things like we started physically getting everything together and then realized that, hey, there's more money to stay here. We're not moving. Okay, we're going to stay. We need to put money into renovating the kitchen. Surprise, the kitchen is the fourth house. So that doesn't surprise me. The good news is that, even though this is stressful, it is in harmony with Neptune and it is in harmony with Saturn. So it does mean that you're making sound decisions revolving around the changes that you're making for your home and your family and what's going to be best financially. So that should make you feel good. When I think about other people, this could be your spouse, your clients, your husband's family, whatever. This is the seventh house, how you relate to other people. And what has happened here recently in the last 2 weeks or so is Uranus has been in a square with Mercury, which means tension, stress within the home and family, building up to communication issues with other people. The seventh house is also your marketplace. So if there was a time to be do I want to get back into making stuff? Do I feel like it? What do I have to offer? How do I connect with people? A Mercury retrograde is a great time to do that. Part of me feels inclined to tell you, because Uranus is now coming into a square with your ascendant or your descendant, and the full moon next month, there is still more to come. I don't like saying that, but there's more stuff that's happening. So it's kind of order of sequence. The first thing that I would really focus on is the fact that you're in an 11th house here. So the 11th house is about joy, creativity. It can be about coming together with people, meeting with groups. And you have Jupiter in your whole sign 6, which means making time to help heal and collaborate with other people, right? Jupiter, Cancer, Chiron. That means Jupiter is your time lord until your birthday in November. So currently Jupiter is hanging out in Gemini, which is moving through your 5th house, which means you're supposed to be making time, 6th house, connection, to creating new things, to spending time with your kid, to focusing on, what makes you happy, to things that you can create. So it's more about how can I rearrange my schedule in the next month and kind of get back into the swing of a routine to be able to do more of these things. It's also about feeling like now you have to unpack your house, organize things, deal with a remodel. It's going to feel like stuff is everywhere and it's kind of impacting your schedule. So there's that as well. So, if the house stuff is not conducive to being able to work and create, then you want to be able to get the house stuff in order so that way you can do some of those things. Believe it or not, your in-laws are going to be your 9th house, and that's Venus, whole sign 9th house, Libra. And Venus is coming into a square with Uranus, which actually seems to indicate that in the next week or two, between Venus squaring and Mercury going retrograde, your partner may step up and say something to his family about the dynamic issues that you're having with them. It is possible that he could get involved. It's also going to square your 10th house. So what your partners do, or what your friends do, or what your relationships do, are going to have a huge impact on what's going to happen, and how you're going to navigate things going forward. With Uranus in opposition to your Mercury still, there's a little bit of static with communication with other people. And usually this much Scorpio, it likes to be the boss, it likes to be in charge. and you're getting thrown off because it's not all about work and kind of career stuff. Now it's all about home, family, mom stuff. It's an opposition. So the best thing you can actually do is get into the opposite sign, right? So Taurus, stability, slow, grounding. This is taking care of your nervous system. This is focusing on keeping things peaceful and harmonious in the home. If the family can't do that in the home, they're not welcome in the home. And that's part of some of the sextiles to Saturn that's going to be happening. It's like, look, I'm not having this in my house. And having that conversation maybe with your husband, and then also politely finding a way to maybe say that to his family, being like, I'm not going to have this. We need stability in the house. I need that. That's number one. Number two is you got a pretty interesting transit where Mars is going to hit your moon, which can generally make you kind of agitated, but it's going to be with Jupiter. And that might mean that the creativity, the inspiration, the opportunity to create again, especially rings and things you can wear on the wrist, Gemini, comes back. And that'll be the second half of August. Yes, it'll square Saturn, but it means that the only way it won't happen is if you're not making the time to do it or you're not making the investment, right? And then two, you're going to have Jupiter that's going to hit your moon. So first of all, P.S., I called the first one, so I'm going to tell you again, that's a huge pregnancy transit. Mars and Jupiter hitting your moon, trine your ascendant, and your second child is your seventh house, and this is a Mercury retrograde. There could be another pregnancy unless you're trying to do that. Then you're going to have a full moon on your ascendant. So that's three big triggers that's kind of saying like, there's a lot of creative energy that's floating around. Do something with it in the next month, right? Totally organizing my garage to be able to create again. This is top priority. Cool. Yes, the family is upset with me, but won't talk to me. Well, I mean, you could wait, but I would actually say with like Venus coming into opposition with Saturn, you're likely to either hear that they're going through your husband or they're giving you the cold shoulder. But somewhere around the eclipse in Libra, when that happens in the beginning of October, that's when there's going to be more, I'm not going to say a blowout, but there's going to be a solar eclipse with a Mercury cazimi. That means there's going to be something coming up. Are you guys having arguments over like time with the kid or, their access to your child or like traveling and seeing your kid? Because it's making aspects to your whole sign fifth. Okay. I think we're okay there. All right, well, just giving you a heads up, but do something with the creative energy. Expect more from the in-laws actually closer to October. And that solar eclipse with the cazimi means there's going to be some kind of communication here. They thought I disrespected them with how when we stayed with them in Texas. Well, a great time to hash out any miscommunications or, discrepancies is a retrograde in the seventh house. It's gonna be a lot less heated and dramatic when it's in Virgo. Okay, so you have until about like the 5th, and then it's gonna get a little spicy. Or you could wait. I really would say once it goes back into Leo and it squares Uranus, that's gonna definitely make it a lot more difficult, and like the family could actually start could create issues with your spouse, and then it could create some tension between you. You could say to him, let's just hash it out and smooth it over and see if we can kind of talk about it. If you don't do that, then, I would say stay out of it and address it closer to October once it's blown over a little bit. But first things first is with you having this 11th house year, you need to be making time for healing, making time for community and connecting with people. If you don't feel 100%, you're not going to help other people feel better. So get back into the swing of organizing your space so you feel like you can create again. You can get back into the healing circle stuff when Mars goes into Cancer. And when it's starting to come into a trine with Saturn. I think that's going to be a time where you're going to feel like you have more energy. And that's going to be closer to mid-September. So I would wait. When Mars conjuncts Jupiter and trine Saturn, a better time to do that is going to be in September. This is the time to kind of get the house in order and do some of that stuff first. And I feel like a lot of the house stuff can actually be complete come about November when you're starting to have like a full moon that's coming in your 4th house. Jupiter on the moon is about having creativity, happiness, joy, and it will square Saturn. So don't let some of the moods get in the way of your ability to create and play and have fun, because that's really important during this particular transit. I hope that's helpful for you. Certainly Saturn trine your sun and Pluto is helping you majorly change and transform something about your career. And you may not see it right now, but this is about making the most of what you've got. This is also about going through a lot of the materials and seeing what you can use without having to buy more stuff, because it's about being more conservative with what you're spending when it comes to your creative projects, right? You're welcome. I hope that's helpful. It can be hard having all that Scorpio. We just like scorp out. We're born like 3 days apart, so we have a lot of the same placements. Good luck. Keep me updated. All right, so we've got Corey, Julia, Rosalie. Okay. All right, Corey. So let's plug you in. Corey, what's your question? I thought I had you in here. What's up, Corey? All right, so that is May 4th, 84. And Pittsburgh at 3:59 a.m. There we go. All right, sorry, I had to plug your chart back in. Okay, so let's look at your question. Corey here. I rushed to get in the queue and forgot to send my question. I basically wanted a breakdown of my chart because it's loaded. RX, Pluto, oppositions for any advice in the current transits. Okay, yeah. So before I talk about the Pluto breakdown of my chart, because so you want a breakdown of what, just the current oppositions and advice for the transits. Before I talk about the Pluto at 0 degrees, you want to understand and look at your natal Venus-Pluto opposition, okay? So you got Pluto in the 7th house of intense, transformative, karmic, because Pluto is retrograde, relationships, right? And Pluto rules your 8th house of joint resources, sex, intimacy, psychological stuff. And it's the power sometimes that people have over you, right? It's also shared resources, other people's money, because it kind of brinks on the 8th house. Then you got Venus, which is about love, harmony, pleasure. And both of these planets, by the way, are in their domicile. So they're both very powerful. Neither one of them, because they're fixed, wants to give up. So there seems to be a bit of like strife between what's yours and what's somebody else's, basically. And if you notice in your chart, you have interceptions. See how your first house starts with Pisces and your second house is Taurus? Aries and Libra get swallowed up. So this tells me that you should have an issue with your Mars and you should have an issue with your Venus. Watch this. This is magic. Venus opposes Pluto. That would be issues and power struggles in love and money and relationships. Then we've got Mars. Mars is retrograde. It's conjunct Saturn. And it also makes a quincunx to your Mercury and a quincunx to your Moon. Interesting, Mars is the focal point of a yod. Well, at least you have Mars and Pluto in Scorpio. That makes it easier. Mars is also in opposition to your sun. It's like a lot of your life is in opposition. Almost all of your planets are opposing something for the most part. This tells me that you have to learn how to do both, right? So when we think of Aries, which is self, our goals, our body, our energy, our action, and then Libra, which is other people, togetherness, partnership, relationship, marriage, there is something that's a blind spot about these things for you. So under the realm of, second house, 8th house, what's mine, what's yours? It could be money, it could be food, it could be whatever, right? So you have to understand that there's a lot of intense things revolving around relationships and resources for you. And it could be themes of jealousy, possessiveness, things like that. So when Pluto comes in and it starts squaring your Venus, which in itself, that's a closing square. So it's saying, okay, it's time to stop being this way with certain people. And it's going through your 11th house, technically your whole sign 12. So this could be about psychologically purging out any fears or insecurities that you have about love, relationships, and money. This could also mean that it's coming through major changes in your goals when it comes to relationships or friendships, or changes in relationships with friends where suddenly things end and you're like, I have to let that go. Sometimes Venus square Pluto is literally having to let a toxic relationship or female relationship, friend kind of go. But it's also your Pluto square Pluto. I call this like the zombie resurrection transit, where it's like you get almost to, 38, 39, 40, and like the things that you thought were dead and buried, they come back to haunt you. So what this is creating is a T-square with Pluto, and you'll see some of these things that'll come up in dreams. You can have nightmares. It could be drama that you have with friends that creates some kind of tension over relationships or money, whatever. But it's been real hot because the sun has been in opposition to that. Essentially, I think it's showing you where unhealthy relationships with certain people, or even certain things that you're eating, because it is in your second house, and Venus in the second house, it likes to indulge in things that makes it feel good, or it likes to spend money, or it likes to focus on pleasure. Venus in the second house is like self-care. That's how they will define everything. So much about this Mercury retrograde through your sixth house, which is going to make aspects to that, is basically saying sometimes that's not good. It's not good to just indulge to feel better. Sometimes it's not just to have somebody because we want to be alone. Sometimes it's not about, shopping sprees because we feel sad, right? That stuff can kind of happen. And the retrograde is going to actually start in your whole sign 7th and go into your 6th. So there's a lot of working out relationship kinks with this. Thankfully, it trines your Venus. So it can help you communicate in a way that's like, this isn't working, or this isn't my shit, this is your shit. And you're going to learn that. I would say get very comfortable with that phrase, because Saturn and Neptune are in your first house. You're going to have to learn how to have better boundaries with people, be more self-aware, and take better care of protecting your energy and your space. As the North Node, Saturn and Neptune are coming together in this next year and you see eclipses, you're going to be like, I have to put my health first. I have to put my mental health first. I have to put myself first sometimes. And you'll see through eclipses in your 7th house that people don't always know what they're doing, or they don't always have their act together. Relationship stuff's also coming up because Chiron, which brings up wounds, is conjunct Mercury that rules your 7th. And there's a lot of being like, well, I don't know if I feel valuable because I may or may not have a relationship or a partner. And that could be making you kind of second guess yourself as well. Pros is that Jupiter's on your moon, and that's pretty much your best thing that's going on right now. Jupiter on your moon is going to make you more optimistic. It's going to make you more travel happy. You might be considering do I want to go and relocate? Do I want to travel somewhere else? Do I want to change homes? Do I want to visit with my family? These things are really nice because it's going to be sextiling Mercury. So it's going to open the door to new financial opportunities, to, learning new things about yourself, to meeting new people, right? So there is some method to the madness here, but I would just say that, really it's through either some of your psychological stuff that kind of comes up for you in dreams, or through, friendship challenges, you're going to see some of the breakdown. And it's been my interpretation, Venus in Aquarius square Pluto in Aquarius square Venus in Taurus is kind of like, are we friends or are we something more? And you're gonna have issues with having undefined physical relationships with people without some kind of title there, right? Anyway, I hope that that's helpful in giving you some insight and some food for thought. But yeah, you got a lot of stuff going on with these transits. I'd go and learn about Venus in opposition to Pluto natally. It'll give you more of a better understanding. So we've got, let's see, Yulia, Rosalie, and Rachel. All right, Yulia. She says, any advice on career, thinking of leaving the industry and taking a long break or possible move for a second part of the year? Appreciate your advice. I'm January 3rd, 86 in Belarus. You're welcome. Thinking of leaving the industry or taking a career break. Oh. As Pluto retrogrades through Aquarius. Thinking of leaving. You know, one thing that I think about here is that also Saturn is the traditional ruler of your 10th of career, okay? So as Saturn is in your 11th house, your goals revolving around work are changing and the kind of work you could do and who you're hoping to kind of align with. I don't know what you do for work, but I think with Saturn square Uranus, there can be this itching to make a change. And also the South Node hitting your moon, you're like, I need to switch something up with my daily routine. So like you got it going on all around here. If you wanted to take a break, I would say as a Taurus rising, while Pluto is retrograde, pretty much from September, let's see, it's going to be the very beginning of September until it goes back into Aquarius in November, you could do that. You could definitely do that. And then when you have a stronger transit around your natal Uranus, so Mercury will retrograde over it, I assume you would probably go back to work around the beginning of December. Okay, so September, October, November, it looks like it would be about a 3-month break. And the only thing you got to think about is that, you know, Mercury is going to retrograde in your 8th house. So you got until about then to where you're like, okay, am I, you know, running low on funds? Do I feel like I need to get a full-time job again? You know, that's when you're going to start to kind of feel the pressure. Equally, Mars rules relationships, and you'll see Mars oppose Pluto. So due to changing circumstances, either in relationships or your interaction with the people that you're working with, that may also impact making a change at work and within your career. You'll change careers a couple times in this lifetime. Thankfully, you have Jupiter direct in your 10th. So in Jupiter square Mars, which means you're very driven. So there's no issues there. There can be some competitiveness with other people, but Jupiter in the 10th is great. And when we look at your natal Saturn, it's on the cusp of the 8th house, so change and transformation of career is given. You know, you may be seeking something more creative or more exciting. And then Uranus is conjunct Mercury. So that's the whole, well, I get sick of making money one way, I want to do something else. You may have an interest, I mean, obviously in astrology, Mercury, Uranus, but it could also be like in investing in the 8th house, especially because it's ruled by Jupiter. You might do really well with like forecasts or some kind of divination or like readings or talking to people about upcoming patterns and trends in financial analysis. That's one thing that kind of comes up there. Psychology is another thing. I really think that for a lot of Taurus risings, like, you know, Pluto going retrograde back into Capricorn is a lot of like a reevaluating, like, what do I believe when it comes to my career, and what training do I need, or what direction could I go in where I could do something different. So I think that's a good time for hiatus, personally, if that's what you want to do. But I think that it would probably be about, you know, September through December, and then there's going to be a change in direction. And then Pluto's going to fully move into Aquarius, and it's going to stay there for the next, like, almost like 20 years. If you stay on the path that you're on, though, one thing I'll tell you is that eventually, you know, Pluto coming into a square with your North and South Node, yeah, you're gonna burn out. So I think it's smart that you do take a little bit of a break, really reassess your resources, and make sure that financially you can kind of swing it. And don't be surprised if at the end of the year there's some stuff that comes up where, you know, there may potentially be some bigger changes in your living situation based off of where what you're ultimately doing for work. Or if you do find that you're able to have more flexibility with work and change and go into a different field, it's going to give you the opportunity to kind of move more freely, because that Mars retrograde, oof, it's going to square your North and South Node, and Mars is about relationships. I'm already in burnout stage. I feel like you're just reconfirming it. Yeah, it's just when it squares at a 6, it's going to be health stuff. So you don't want to wait that long, you know? You don't want to wait that long. But yeah, I think you could give it 3 months. I think that's something you could totally do. Just know that Saturn in your 11th house is going to be about networking, or it's going to be about connecting with people and connecting with groups. So that way you kind of feel like you're funneling into different potential opportunities to like work with different companies or in different fields, right? Anyway, I hope that that's helpful for you. I hope you're able to take a break and feel refreshed and find something that's going to be a little bit more exciting. That's very, very doable. I think the question will be at the end of the year, you found it, but is this something that you're going to do full time? Is it sustainable? All right, so we have got Rosalie and then Rachel and Rebecca. You guys are my last ones. All right, let's look at Rosalie. Rosalie says 12/11/97, and that was in LA. Wondering what's coming for me in love. I'm visiting London at the end of August. I also have a feeling that someone might come back from the past. And your August horoscope kind of confirmed it. Could you speak more about that in my chart? Sure. So, well, the Mercury retrograde technically starts, yes, in your whole sign 7th house. You're welcome. And it's going to go retrograde into Leo. So it's not unusual for my Pisces and my Aries risings to kind of hear from people from the past. Okay, so that's part of it. Especially because, you know, Mercury rules your 7th house. The challenge here is that when that retrograde happens, it's going to be, you know, in aspect to Saturn and Neptune. So it makes me feel like it's going to be like, well, do I want that person back? Like, do I have time for them? Like, am I interested there? You know, just some food for thought. Just because you do hear from them doesn't mean you'll go back. 2 is you need to have a really strong transit to your natal Mercury for there to be a relationship that happens. Okay, so you got Mercury retrograde in Capricorn. It means that, you know, in this next year, when Jupiter opposes your Mercury, okay, you are Jupiter, by the way. When Jupiter opposes your Mercury, there can be a sense of like a back and forth relationship that's going on that will influence where you're living and if you would potentially reconsider moving for someone or not. And you're also going to see Saturn and Neptune come together in Aries and square your Mercury. So that means that you're going to be part of your Saturn return. You haven't come into your Saturn return yet. So Saturn in the 1st house in Aries is learning how to redefine who I am outside of other people, which you're probably going to say, I've already been dealing with that with eclipses in Aries and Libra. They have been hitting your 1st and 2nd house, and there's been much more of an emphasis on you rather than relationships. Girl, your sun's at a 19. And 19 deals with marriage and relationships, and Saturn is squaring that. So it means that there is a delay going on in a relationship right now. Why? Because you have to travel, you have to learn, you have to kind of figure out who you are before you settle into something. And then you top all that off with Pluto retrograde coming back in a conjunction with your Venus. Pluto wants to totally change and transform something. It can be about a very powerful love affair that you have with somebody who's a foreigner. You could meet them through a group of friends or have some kind of connection there. It can be hard to determine whether or not it's friends or it's something more. But my money is personally on relationship stuff. It's still getting worked out. You know, Pluto on your Venus for a couple months, that's going to be trying to get you to let go of old relationships. Saturn in your 12th house on your South Node wants you to be a little bit less available for people. And then you will see Mercury turn retrograde over your sun, and that's going to be November going into December of this year. See, I wonder if you meet somebody while you're traveling, because you do have your 7th house ruler that is technically, you know, kind of hanging out in your whole sign 8th house. That means you might meet somebody while you're traveling or at an airport, or you meet them while you're on a trip or in a foreign country, right? And even the Pluto, Venus, Neptune stuff could be meeting somebody in a foreign place. Pluto also is conjunct Neptune, which is your 2nd ruler. So there's so much more that's evolving in this chart that it almost seems like you're still trying to figure out who you are. And there's chance opportunities and meetings and connections for relationship end of November into December. But man, that Mercury retrograde is messy for everybody, because Mercury in Sagittarius is not comfortable. And that's going to go in a square with Saturn and Neptune. It's going to oppose Jupiter. I feel like there may be more traveling going on in the fall, and that may be a time where you meet someone. That's kind of the feeling that I'm getting. And then next year, you're going to see Saturn and Neptune square Mercury. So it's going to be like, well, how do we bridge the gaps in togetherness? I really feel like really up until your Saturn's return, because it's in Aries and it's in the first house, there is a sense of learning how to define who you are outside of a relationship. So I don't say this to squash any relationship hope, but it's very obvious to me that, you know, that's something you're working on the next year or two. Relationships are going to definitely be a thing. Like if you're like, when do I seriously settle into something? Probably when Jupiter goes into your 7th house and it hits your Juno. That's going to be like the end of 2027, beginning of 2028. That could be more serious commitment, you know, an engagement or marriage. You know, the North Node will be on your Venus then, and you no longer have planets squaring your Mercury. So that's going to be a better time for commitment. In retrospect, that's not that far away. You know, we're coming into 2025 pretty soon. I would go and learn about Saturn in Aries and Saturn in the 1st house. I always tell people when they're coming up on 27, 28, go and get your Saturn return reading, because you're having your progressed lunar return, which is going to give you a little bit of insight into what eventually your Saturn return will be like. And Saturn in the 1st house needs to learn how to stand on its own 2 feet before it enters into a relationship. And between the aspects and the things kind of going on with Saturn and some of your other planets, it does seem like you're trying to figure out who you are first before you settle into a relationship with another person. A lot of figuring out for Sagittarius is, where's home? Where do I want to live? You know, where am I supposed to be? And if you're feeling that this year, that's going to kind of get wrapped up a little bit more in the spring of next year. I think the most important thing right now is asking yourself, you know, am I going to let the past come back? Because that'll come back not with just this Mercury retrograde. That will also come back when you're dealing with the solar eclipse in Libra, because it's going to be in your 7th house, which will be in the beginning of October. You will see this also pop up again, probably sometime around September of 25. And my goodness, all these 29s that are going to happen here. 29. Saturn almost at 29, you know. And this is also potentially a situation fall of next year where you're like, yeah, I don't really know if this is working for me. Relationships are going to get stronger when you start embracing Saturn in your 1st house, or transit Saturn in your 1st house. When you're more of a stickler about your needs and your expectations in relationships and what doesn't work for you, relationships will get easier, because Saturn trines your sun. So it means that when you feel like you can be really clear and open and honest and have healthier boundaries about what your needs are, relationships will kind of come together a little bit easier, you know? So go and learn about Saturn and Aries in your 1st house. That's really important. And as you go through your Saturn return, a lot of this will make sense, and you'll be like, oh my God, yeah, I had to figure out who I was before I committed to another person more so seriously. Hopefully that's helpful for you. But hey, Juno's on your descendant. You could definitely meet people. It's happening. You're having your Juno return. It's just with the South Node. So it's gonna be people who feel like karmic or kind of familiar in some way. Good luck. All right, we have Rachel. And let's see, 9-1. You're welcome. Have fun on your trip. All right, so let's see what Rachel says. Hey Candice, I'm experiencing a reverse nodal return as well as the nodes conjunct my ascendant and descendant. I love to know what speaks to me, what this speaks for me personally, and information that can be gained in these regards to romantic love in the future. Can you tell me more about natal Venus in Cancer? I know being a Libra rising, North Node Venus and the planetary ruler of the sign of Cancer might speak to my soul's purpose. Okay. So as a Libra rising, your Venus placement is important. So wherever Venus is where you're going to kind of see what your strengths are. So Venus in the 10th house means that you find pleasure, beauty, basically working or being in the public eye, or, providing a service for someone. It's so funny that Libra risings, their midheaven is Cancer, because this means that they kind of tend to fall into professional roles where they're nurturing or they're healing or they're, taking care of somebody's home or property or, focusing on like being a parent. And that may not be the truth for every Libra rising. You're going to have to look at the aspects that are going on. But in your case, Venus is at a 24. So this is going to be design, art, photography, music, metaphysical things, working in private places, universities, working in hospitals, because that's a Pisces degree. And Venus is conjunct Mars, which is considered, I think, pretty good, considering Mars represents relationships. So this means that you really value working in a position where you're helping other people in some way, okay? Mars represents making money and also your values, and Venus represents other people's resources. So you could have a client-based business where you're helping them with something. You're helping them change or transform something. Then you take into consideration the aspects that Venus is making. Well, you have a pretty significant opposition to Neptune. Almost Uranus, but definitely Neptune. So Neptune in the fourth house is about emotions, and it can be about illusions. It can be about things that are more spiritual. It can be things that are otherworldly. Neptune and Uranus in the fourth house makes me kind of feel like there was a little bit of like chaos going on in your upbringing. There could have been a sense of not always feeling like family understood you, or you come from an interesting background, or there could have been some instability that could have happened within your home or your family, like separations, divorces. You could have people in the family that have had mental health issues or addiction issues. And so it's interesting that Venus in the 10th house is saying like, well, I've had these experiences, so I want to help people. Okay. The other way of looking at this is you can work with Neptune in a way where you're feeling creative and inspired, and you might be able to go into a space and renovate it or redesign it or, rework it in some way, shape, or form. And that's the way that you work with the Neptune energy. It just kind of depends. But yeah, Venus in Cancer is about nurturing, and it's about femininity, and it's about vulnerability, especially when it comes to home and family. But in the 10th house, it's got this feeling of, well, love gets better with age, right? Career kind of, gets better with age. You will do very well working in a profession or in a position where you maybe work with a spouse, because Mars rules your 7th house. You might meet them. If you end up having a job change, or you end up, going in a different direction with your career, you might meet your future partner actually through work, and you may end up being in a similar industry or kind of business, right? I'm just seeing your comment. Thanks for reading my chart. I've been read for you since... Okay, cool. You're welcome. The other thing that I would say is that with the reverse nodal return, all I can tell you is that my feeling when I had this reverse nodal return was a lot of like, what I've been doing is no longer working. It's not working for me anymore. Like I can't go in that same direction of the North Node. And that I needed to do something different. So as a Libra rising, I feel like, and I'm a Libra rising too, it was easier because Libra risings already have to learn how to work both houses, right? Like there is a need to be able to reflect back both signs in both houses. So as a Libra rising, a lot about, relationship to other people and also relationship to yourself. There is that back and forth, and you have a lot of those oppositions in your chart between Aries and Libra. So when you think about the North Node, this is about what you're here to achieve, what you're here to do. North Node conjunct Mercury means you might go into the field of therapy, psychology, healing, mysticism, anything involving divination, working and helping and healing people through support in a private space, right? 12th house. So these people who have North Node Mercury in the 12th house are usually pretty intuitive, pretty psychic, but they may keep it to themselves. Well, the South Node is going through there, and it's saying like, no, we can't keep it to ourselves anymore. It does bring up some turbulence sometimes. It brings up some things relating to past life relationships we have to deal with, Libra, what needs to change in regards to relationship karma clearing. And then the North Node is coming into conjunction with your South Node, which is saying, actually, instead of looking at relationships as difficult or challenging, because it's on your descendant, you will actually be more encouraging and inspiring other people to take action. Maybe you are going to be a little bit more involved in relationships. Relationships can also be more combative, by the way, with North Node in Aries along the descendant. Now it's coming into conjunction with Saturn, okay? And Saturn rules your house of home and family. So this is going to be more about being like, I'm not going to not fold my clothes or not do my chores around the house. I'm not going to put off some of the things that I know that I should do. It's saying North Node in the 6th house. Have a routine, be structured, take care of your body, be active, working out, and holding yourself accountable for productivity. Saturn is in your 6th house anyway, so it's doing the same stuff. So, in a way, it's prepping you with the North Node being there for your Saturn return, right? And you have Saturn in the 6th, conjunct the South Node, which means you may be more prone to health-related issues, maybe digestional issues, Aries stuff, headaches, migraines, cuts, burns, abrasions, issues with digestion. Look at the reverse nodal return as like a way of being like, rather than avoiding issues with imbalances or relationships or fears or, sometimes even mental health challenges, Mercury in the 12th, you're learning how to work through it in a way where you have habits and routines. You're processing things by working out, you're staying active, you're working on some of your issues and things that maybe keep you from sticking to a routine or following through with some of your work or health goals, basically. As the eclipses kind of come through there, because you're going to have one in the fall, it's going to be right on your ascendant, okay, and it's going to be conjunct Chiron. That I would watch. Because that can bring some health stuff up here, especially with the Cazimi. That can be where you're having health stuff and you're feeling exhausted, and it will oppose Saturn in the North Node. If you're not already feeling that. And then Saturn and Neptune will go into Aries, and they will be dancing on your natal Saturn. Really important to be paying attention to your mental health, your thought process, your patterning, the way you talk to yourself, the way you think about things, and not letting it fester and develop into emotional issues or negative habits and things of that nature, because that can happen, right? Saturn in the 6th house, with the South Node natally can mean just not making an effort or not putting enough effort into relationships and being with other people. 7th house is not just romantic relationships. It's your astrologer, it's your therapist, it's relationships that you have with coaches and other people. And it's ruled by Mars, and Mars is in the 10th. It's saying you gotta get busy, because so much about your professional life will involve either a coach or somebody who's guiding you, or it's going to be some kind of partner that you're going to work with, right? I have Libra rising too, with Moon in my 7th house. I have a lot of clients, I counsel and I work with clients. And I have some of the same oppositions as you, and a lot of that stems from stuff that's kind of happened, throughout my life, and experiences that I've had that helps me better relate to other people and kind of give them feedback and give them help. Interesting chart you have. I hope that that's helpful. Go and learn about Pluto square your moon too, okay? That definitely puts the pressure on emotional relating, and also stuff revolving around relationships with women, particularly sometimes moms. That can bring some pressure up there. I hope that that's helpful for you. Let me know. All right, we've got Rebecca. There we go. Oh, I don't think that's the right Rebecca. Hold on. January 26th. That one. There we go. Got a number of Rebeccas in there. Sorry. All right, so we've got Rebecca, January 26th, 81. She says, just curious what I need to watch right now. During my solar return reading, you mentioned I needed to take time off for a vacation in early August. Just wondering if that's the new moon that's going to be affecting me heavily. You're welcome. Okay, so let's see. During my solar return, you mentioned I need to take time off for vacation in early August. So that is going to be more the new moon that would be coming in connection to your whole 12th house. But it must have been something that was in, oh, now I know what it is. It's going to be the Mercury retrograde. So Mercury for Libra rising is going to turn retrograde in Virgo Okay, technically it's in your 11th house, but it is your whole sign 12. This is about re-evaluating something when it comes to mental health, your habits, your spirituality. You know, I have seen a lot of like Libra risings that are like, I need to go on a retreat, or I need to go on a vacation, or I need to take time to kind of like reassess or kind of like get my, get my rest. Mercury rules the 9th house of travel, right? So it can be reconnecting and going and meeting with a group and, doing some kind of retreat thing or taking some kind of meditation class or doing some kind of like yoga retreat with people. That's most likely why I said that to you. And it's going to turn retrograde with Venus. So a lot of Libra risings are going to be either, I think, embracing this transit and being like, I'm going to make the change willingly, or they could have some health related matters if they're running themselves ragged and they're not taking time off. And you may not see it right away with the Mercury-Venus conjunction, but some Libra risings will have some health issues when the moon will oppose Saturn from about August 18th through the 20th, okay? Because this is going through the 12th house, which is about rest and healing, and it's going to oppose Saturn, which is about routine. If you consciously say, I'm taking time away around that time, it may be a little bit easier to navigate. Yes, it's going to square Jupiter. So it means that there may be some changes that you have to make, and you have to schedule the time to travel. But remember, Mars rules the North Node, so it does want you to take some kind of action and do some of this work because it's going to be kind of beneficial for your growth. I think the other reason why I said that to you is because the South Node is now in your 12th house, So now that it's in the 12th house, it's healing centers, private spaces, anything in regards to spirituality, doing some kind of work in the subconscious. And the South Node is sitting there. So it's saying it's time to kind of clear some of that stuff out. If, there's been any blockages or any issues revolving around Libra things, relationships, beauty, balance. Such a great time to like do something that's like yoga related, because that's a lot of flexibility in the lower back, Libra. And you're going to have some of these really nice transits that are going to kind of help you take a little bit of a break, right? Another time that we usually, do something that's going to be more kind of like fun, where we are enjoying ourselves more and having a little bit more playtime, is when we have a full moon in the 5th house. So you're going to have this full moon in the 5th house in Aquarius, and it's going to trine your moon and your Pluto. So it's interesting that right around the time that you're having the Venus-Saturn, it doesn't have to mean that you're sick and you're taking a break or you're exhausted. It could mean that you're like, I'm giving myself time off and I'm going to go and have some fun. And this plays actually very well with the trine to your moon Pluto, which is emotionally transformational, and then the Mars-Jupiter, which opens up the door to traveling with other people, taking a bit of time off. Sometimes, Mars and Jupiter and Gemini can be like longer road trips. It doesn't mean that you necessarily have to like fly anywhere. It just means that you might take a little bit more time to kind of get to where you're going by car. And it can be that you're meeting with other people and things that are going to be more educational, giving you an opportunity to get a break. I would seriously look in August and see, is there like a weekend like yoga retreat? Is there like a creative retreat? Is there something, where you can go and zen out and maybe be closer to nature for a couple days and take a good book? I'm a Libra rising too, so I noticed it was right when Mercury went into Virgo. I bought, I think it's, what's it called? Atomic Habits or Automatic Habits. I don't know what the title's called, but I literally took it into my bedroom and then I was reading it and I looked at my transits and I was like, wow, Mercury's in my 12th house in Virgo and I'm in bed literally reading about healthier habits. So it doesn't have to be that. It could be organization, skills you're learning about, or you're learning about some kind of spiritual or metaphysical thing, or you're learning about meditation. Any of these things can be really beneficial, but it can also be giving you a break and letting you have some fun. And I think that all of the transits seem to kind of indicate that if you don't willingly do that, when Venus opposes Saturn and the Sun opposes Saturn, and as a Libra rising, you're about to have a full moon, a lunar eclipse in your 6th, and you have not had those for about 9 years. So now Libra risings have to be more aware of their health. Well, when this full moon comes through, it's going to square Jupiter. So it basically means that, you know, in order to better your health, you have to learn something. Or in order to better your habits, you're going to bring on a teacher or a guru, or you're going to read a book or something that's going to kind of help you with some of this stuff, right? So rather than waiting for it to happen, you can kind of do it consciously, and you can make the decision to kind of get with it and at least make some fun out of it if you know that you have to learn some of these things, right? Anyway, I hope that that's helpful in giving you some insight. And I hope that, yeah, you have some fun with whatever it ends up being that you're going to do. I think that's everybody. So thank you guys for hanging out with me on Friday night. I appreciate it. I'll be here next Friday. Surprise, we're going to do astrology again because it's going to be a new moon. So if you haven't already, like the stream, give me a thumbs up. Make sure you're subscribed. I'm here every Friday, 5 o'clock p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. We do readings for a couple hours every Friday, so you can always come back and hang out. Definitely check out my Sunday video. We're going to talk about this upcoming Venus-Uranus square. There's a Mercury retrograde video and horoscopes as well. So if you guys wonder what is going on, you guys can check that information out. Click the links below if you want to learn astrology with me. I've got 2 beginners courses if you would like to learn both natal charts as well as transits. And you can also suss out my website if you want to sign up for my newsletter. I do have some stuff coming out this month that I'm working on. I'm going to be putting together a presentation for the eclipses that are going to happen in September. So we want to kind of touch on those a month early. And I'm putting together a webinar about Pluto and Pluto going back to 29 degrees and what we need to do to get our shift together. So sign up for my newsletter so you're alerted as to when that comes out. As always, thank you guys so much. I appreciate it. And I will catch you back here next time. Take care.